Good morning. Thank you all for joining us this morning. I hope you're all enjoying your summers. It's a really great time to rest and recharge, but it's also a really great opportunity to pause and look ahead with both intention and purpose. That's why today's event is so important. In recent years, we at the Tuckahoe School District have prioritized supporting our students in finding the best fit for college. This effort has included various workshops and speaker events for both students and families. This past year, our administrative team and guidance department conducted a book study around Who Gets In and Why by Jeffrey Salingo. We recommend it highly. We are dedicated to setting our students apart, and we can only achieve that in partnership with everyone in this room. On behalf of Mr. Arthur, Dr. Goodman, and our Board of Education, I want to extend our gratitude to the guidance department, especially Mr. Treglia, who went above and beyond in organizing this event and ensuring it meets the needs of our Tuckahoe students. Special thank you to our building's custodial team for their attention to detail, to Ms. Nicoletos and Ms. Pinto for their organizational skills, and to the PTA for the generous donation of refreshments. For our guests today, restrooms are located in the entryway outside of this auditorium. Today's program begins with a keynote for families and students to attend together. This is vital because your partnership is crucial in this process. The keynote will illuminate the landscape of college admissions. At the conclusion of this entire morning's events, we'll come back together again with a talk on finding the best fit. Those two bookends are really designed to help you all leave here with some discussion topics in mind. In between, there will be specialized workshops for both families and students alike. We have two wonderful university representatives working with our students this morning. We welcome Ms. Anissa Latif of Manhattan College, Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admissions. We also welcome Ms. Zalamea from Iowa University, who, as the Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admissions, oversees the Bronx, Manhattan, and Westchester. Our students are fortunate to have such dedicated and expert speakers to work with today. For our families, you will hear from Ms. Erica Harris and Ms. Julianne Schwartz of Manhattanville University. Ms. Schwartz, the Executive Director of Student Financial Services in Manhattanville, has spent over a decade in the student financial services and financial aid field, dedicating her career to assisting students and families as they navigate the complexities of funding a college education. Ms. Harris, the Associate Director of Admissions at Manhattanville, is a seasoned admissions professional who has guided numerous families in the college search process. And now, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote, Ms. Christina Labella. Ms. Labella is the Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Manhattanville University. With over a decade of experience in higher education, she has worked with selective liberal arts colleges, larger universities, and Division I athletic schools. Christina is passionate about helping families and students find that right fit college and understanding the many nuances of college admissions. So please join me in welcoming Ms. Labella.
Good morning. It truly is my pleasure to be here with you today and with my colleagues to get to talk with you, to get to understand what you're looking for. I know you're going to have a full day of workshops with question and answer opportunities to help you prepare for the college admissions process. As I already was introduced, I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Manhattanville University. And I've had the opportunity to hold many different positions in enrollment management at other institutions. So I truly do have a good understanding of the landscape of college admissions and how that has changed throughout the many years that I've been in higher education. I've been lucky enough to work at 4 different colleges and universities in my career. I've assisted and mentored a number of different families and students throughout this process and gotten to work with some of the best in the field through financial aid, student services. So very happy to share some of that with you. There is a trend right now in our ethos that questions the value and the necessity of a college degree and education. Many are asking, is it worth it? Has the cost of higher education become more than our return? And the discourse reverberates as new laws are passed around college admissions practices and policies. And it may be difficult to wade through all of that information. So what is the value proposition of a college degree? We assess a value proposition all the time, a return on investment. Anytime we participate in something or purchase something, whether you decide to spend money and time on a travel sports team or go to purchase a new car, you're always asking, is this investment worth my time and money? And you should be asking that about your college degree, and you should be thinking about that as you continue this process. Am I going to get what I need out of this? Am I going to find what I need and what I'm looking for in my next step in my career? Am I spending my time and money wisely? These are normal questions. These are questions that are always swirling, in government and in our practices. And so you should be asking that. But not only why you should go to college, but where you should go, where you should spend your time, where you should invest your future, because your future is not just 4 years. Your future at a college extends throughout your lifetime. So those that complete a college degree typically earn more over their lifetime compared to those than just a high school diploma. This is a statistic that is touted time and time again by the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics. The weekly average is 67% higher for your salary if you have a college degree than if you have a high school degree, and that's as of 2023. I'm sorry, I can share these afterwards, but I'll have Mr. Chagliello send them out. According to a Pew Research conducted in 2022 and just published in March of 2024, men with the ages of 18 to 25 with a college degree are earning between $32,000 and $27,000 more than that without a college degree. And then women are between $25,000 and $36,000 more than their high school partners. Typically, college graduates' household income was 93% more than that of a typical high school graduate. So when you take all of that into account, what is that looking like? We're talking about not just your lifetime earnings, but even when you're just out of college, even when you're just starting your career, you're already looking at an income that's higher. I know that everyone's going to have those stories, but I know so-and-so, and they did this. But the majority of us are going to value and bring value from our college education. The income gap between young women with and without a college degree has widened over the decades as opposed to narrowing. And in fact, you will see, let me move forward to the women. In fact, you will see that on the graphs, the trajectory of a bachelor's degree for both men and women in their earnings has gone up over the years, while those with some college degree and only a high school diploma have really stayed the same. Today, the household income average of a college-educated woman stands at 121% higher than that of their counterparts that have some college or a high school diploma. Higher income earnings have always been something at the forefront of a college admissions professional or those that tout why a college degree is necessary. We talk about return on investment. But there are a lot of invaluable, tangible, and intangible skills that you will receive and learn when you're in college. Liberal arts-based schools, such as Manhattanville, skills and knowledge come together to enhance and develop critical thinking. They build on foundational skills that will keep your education relevant and transferable, and that is the most important thing. Workday published a paper in 2023 that highlights that foundational skills and how they intersect on income. And you can't see this, so I am going to have Mr. Chagliello send this out. But what you can see is that students that have foundational skills, notice that you'll see there's a different percentage at the bottom. Those are what they're learning, and then there's a darker line, if you see here, that shows how that transferable, that tangible skill is transferred to income earnings. And why is this important? Because based on the US Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the average individual will have between 9 and 13 different jobs. And maybe that's in the same field, but most likely that's not going to be in the same field. I alone am on my 6th job. I told you I had 4. I've worked for 4 different institutions, which means that I had 2 jobs in my career that have been outside of higher education. I was able to take my transferable skills as a psychology major and bring them to the forefront of different industries. You know, I worked for an economics firm for a little while in their human resources department before I came back to higher education. I got to work in retail for a little while. So being able to take these tangible knowledge-based skills, foundational skills, are an important piece. And you get a chance to practice those when you go to college. You get a chance to use your mentors to take a college speech course, which is what I did. This is probably the first true research speech I've done since college, but I had the foundations that I knew I could bring it forward to you all. You get to have the opportunity to use professors, use your networking that you wouldn't get to have otherwise. The opportunity to meet people through your college, to meet people through your alma mater that you have, opens doors that you wouldn't have otherwise. That's why when I said it's a lifelong opportunity, it's a lifelong commitment to that institution, it truly is. You know, I've gotten to meet numerous people throughout my lifetime just by attending reunions, being able to reach out on LinkedIn, being able to say, this is what I'm interested in, can I pick your brain? And having that person understand where you came from just by the education. Just saying, yes, you know what, we have this connection because you went to Manhattanville and I went to Manhattanville, and we'll sit down and have that mutual respect and bond. That is something that you won't get to have if you don't have the college education. This is an important one, again, from Workday, showing the shares of percentage of employees that moved on to jobs with those that have a bachelor's degree. Again, making that a more valuable income opportunity, more opportunities to network with individuals that have, you know, you always want to be the least smart person in the room, right? And if you get to build your network around those that are smarter than you, that have different skill set, you're going to continue to learn and grow. And that is what a lifetime of a bachelor's degree brings you. The opportunity to continue to think critically, continue to think about where you want to go and how you want to do it, and not be stuck in just something that you perhaps maybe don't love because you have the transferable skills to try something else. College is an investment. It's an investment of your time. It's an investment of your money. You're going to hear, our families are going to hear about financial aid and affording college. You're going to hear about how to find the best fit college for you, whether it's about what major you want to study, where you want to be, where you want to go. And you should be asking the question, is this institution that I'm looking at worth it? Is this worth my time? Is it worth my money? Is it worth the investment in my future? Like I said, overall, higher earning potential, greater foundational skills, networking opportunities, those are all things that you're going to have. And the intangibles that you'll get to have are a lifetime filled, worth your time, investment, and return on investment. You're going to hear about how to support your college students. You're going to hear about what the right fit is. I want to remind you, you're not in this alone. You have all these people in here that are doing this in your high school. You have your high school guidance counselors. You have your college admissions folks. And I'm going to tell you this, we are very honest. We want to make sure that you are going to the right place for you, that you understand what that investment's going to look like, and we are not trying to steer you in the wrong direction. Our hope is to always give you the best and most accurate information that we can to help guide you in your search and your next best future.
So the next part of our presentation is our breakout sessions. Our students are going to get up in a moment, and they're going to have Group A, their blue folder, Group B, their red folder. You're going to be going to classrooms 112 and 113 to meet with Iona University, Manhattan College on completing the common application, professional networking, and starting and working on your personal essay. So we want to see you actively participate in the classroom and use the experience in the room to help you start along your college process today. And not only start that, but build off what you're learning in the room and actively ask questions. This is almost like one-on-one tutoring for you in the room. So let's get up there and let's get to work and use this opportunity as best as we can today. Our parents are going to hear about supporting your students' college search from Erica Harris and Christina from Manhattanville University. We have about a 5-minute break if anyone wants to use the bathroom or get refreshments, and we'll start here at about 9:30, 9:35. Okay? So students, if you can get up, you're going to be going to room 112 for Iona University and room 113 for Manhattanville College. Okay, I'll walk you guys down there, so will Dr. Keogh.
You can support your students' college search. I think many of you got a sense for just how broad this process is. Ms. LaBelle and I were just talking about how, even if you've done this before, I don't know how many of you have older children who've gone through this process. Every year it feels a little bit new. So it's really great to have you all here. And Ms. Harris is going to speak specifically to how you can leave here today and really focus on supporting your students' search. So thank you. Ms. Harris.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. As we mentioned before, my name is Erica Harris. I'm the Associate Director of Undergrad Admissions at Manhattanville. I'm also a proud alumni of Manhattanville as well, so it's a little bit of a soft spot in my heart especially. Today we're going to be chatting about different ways that you can go about supporting your students throughout their college search process. As we all know, the college search process is quite a daunting experience, not only for our students, but obviously for the parents as you're trying to help guide and coach your students through this process. So we're kind of talking about general tips, things that we might need to know, like a lot of the crazy terms and lingos that we use in admissions, and just better ways to kind of help support your students through this next really year of their life. Okay, awesome. So it's like it's not changing there. Okay, so first things first, in terms of some general tips that I think are really helpful, one of the biggest things within this entire process is communication. I think, as we know, communication is key in many factors of our lives, but especially with communicating with our young folk and our children. Finding ways to communicate with them through this process, especially early, is pretty crucial to, I think, it being a successful process. I always kind of say, really start to have that conversation sooner rather than later. Since you are all here today, I can imagine you are already thinking about this next step a little bit more than some others. So one, kudos to you for kind of getting in there and understanding things a bit earlier. And when it comes to that, start the conversation with them to help guide them when it comes to what they want to apply for. There's so many different universities. In the US, there's over 4,000 different institutions alone, let alone other universities worldwide. So there are so many different options to choose from. With that being said, some of the big things when it comes to choosing a college obviously is going to come down to their major. What are their goals and aspirations? What are their interests, their likes, dislikes? Some of those kind of general conversations now can help kind of shape the way that they look at different universities when they're going for their majors and things like that too. Now, the next thing I have is visit, visit, visit. I'll go into a little bit more detail about this in a moment as well, but I cannot stress enough how important the visit experience is when it comes to you and your student, and especially them kind of finding the right fit for you, which I know we'll talk about fit a little bit later on, but visiting, in my opinion, is probably one of the top aspects of really knowing and like seeing yourself at an institution, getting a feel for the campus and things like that, and there are so many different ways that we can go about the visit process, especially nowadays. Now, next, this is obviously going to be a little bit more challenging one, which I can understand for tons of people, is to talk about the affordability. Have that conversation early. I know it can be a touchy subject when it comes to finances, money, and the affordability of college, but as we know, that's a huge part of, That's a huge part of someone making their choice. So really, again, have that conversation a little bit earlier on. Put into perspective where the affordability is, where some of that range is. Knowing that ahead of time can definitely help students shape their experience and shape their search, rather than getting their heart set on someplace that really is not, a possibility in the end. Try and have some of those transparent conversations earlier. And then last, for just some general tips, is that we are here to help. We, your friends in admissions, we are your tools and resources. I think people sometimes think that, admissions counselors and whatnot can be these scary individuals who are making these huge decisions. Yes, we are making big decisions, but at the end of the day, I always tell the students that I work with that I am here to help you through every step of this process. I tell my families that I work with individually, the more I know about you and your family and, the students' aspirations and your family circumstances, the more I can assist and be an advocate for your family on the inside of things. Obviously, you as a family and your student will have to advocate for themselves as well, but those of us on the other side of things are really here as a resource to help guide you. So between us here at admissions, your guidance counselors, school counselors, college counselors, really do not be afraid to use us. I always joke especially that when it comes time for students making those decisions, when I have families that I have never heard from all of a sudden in May asking me questions, I was like, where have you been this whole time? I could have helped you so much more if we had this conversation in February. So again, just really don't be afraid to use us as your resources through this process. Okay, so next, as I mentioned before, visit. When it comes to the overall visit experience, there are a plethora of different ways that students can really kind of get their faces to the counselors or vice versa. Obviously, one of the biggest ones is to actually go on a college visit. We have campus tours and so many different events. Even as I have a little bit of a list going on here, there are so many things that are either on campuses, at the high school levels, or even in your local communities. For example, we will attend college fairs, so I know us as admissions counselors, we really take a lot of the information to students at day-to-day college fairs. We'll come to high school visits as well. So I know Tuckahoe does have a great program here, so really encourage your students to be going to those college visits if they have a school that they're interested in. That's a time when they can meet directly with, myself or the counselors who will be at those different institutions. And they usually are the person who actually will be working through your student's admissions process and the one overall making the decision at the end of the day. So again, the earlier that your students get their face to the counselors, again, we can kind of make those connections and start that earlier on. We also have tons of different things, such as going to the county fairs. I know there's different county fairs within Westchester and with some of the northern boroughs that are not too far from here. I primarily usually work with students within New Jersey, and I actually have seen families from Westchester come over to Jersey because they have these huge fairs that have 300 plus different universities for families to attend. So again, another experience, we can get there and meet those counselors face to face and get some of those experiences. Then when it comes to visiting the college campus, I honestly say there is nothing like stepping on a college campus for the first time, second time. That's where you're truly going to envision yourself, or yourself as student will truly envision themselves in that atmosphere. Can they see themselves in the dining hall? Can they see themselves walking around the campus grounds? Those different types of experiences are a huge aspect to, again, making the informed college decision. And on those college campuses, we have tons of different things like open houses, admitted students days, even specific visit days. I know I primarily work with a lot of students in the arts, so I'll have days that are on campus just dedicated towards those students understanding the arts programs, different classroom visits and things like that. Really, again, use those different aspects to help get a better picture of the student in that space. All right, now make a wish list. This is something that I definitely recommend to my families when I'm starting that search process with them, especially in their sophomore, junior year. And perfect time still now, as we still have a month or so before really college apps really have to start picking up. When it comes to making a wish list, start thinking of some of those things that are an absolute non-negotiable for your student, but then also what are the things that you can be flexible on? I know, just speaking from my own experience, I was looking at a bunch of different things when it came to universities. I know I didn't want to be too far from home, but I definitely didn't want to be too close either. I wanted to be a nice, safe drive or plane ride away. Things like campus size, classroom size, again, make a huge impact to the overall choice. For me, I wanted to go to a school, I had a very specialized major for my undergraduate program, so I needed to go to a school that had that exact major and a pretty defined curriculum compared to some other institutions and some different majors. But with that, I knew that there were certain degrees and levels that I wanted to be pursuing. And then overall environment. For me, I knew I wanted to be close to a city, but not necessarily in the city or not too, I didn't care if I was in New York City, but I definitely didn't want to be in the middle of nowhere in Idaho. So I think things like that to kind of get a better idea of what your students' likes and dislikes are also helps. Now with that, that's where it also comes time to flexibility. How many of these things are things that you're absolute must have? For me, it was a small classroom size, closer to New York with my major, but for me, some of the flexible things were like, the sports programs at the school. Was I going to be going to those D1, like Rutgers type of games? Probably not, but would it something I would enjoy? Also yes. So things like that are the absolute different tiering of what you have to have, what you would like to have, and something that maybe doesn't actually, impact your decision at all. This I also do want to say at the same time as you're making that wish list or helping your student make that wish list, also keep an open mind. At the end of the day, this is their college experience, and so though we might think that one thing would be the perfect fit for them, they really do want to start to know themselves at this point. We're transitioning from teenagers to young adults. So again, to keep an open mind as a parent and to help guide them through this process also. Now, when it comes to narrowing the search, as I already mentioned, there are over 4,000 different institutions in the US. Now, tons of different people have different thought processes into again narrowing it. Is it using the wish list? Is it again just purely visiting 24/7? Is it going based off of finances? All those different factors. Now, one thing that I kind of think is to put your different schools almost into buckets. I kind of like to joke that these are kind of three main buckets that you might have when you're kind of looking at different institutions, and I've simplified them down to what I call like the local match, the slight reach, and then the big dreamer. When it comes to that, for the local match, is it a school that's closer to you that the student really fits the school profile? When I say school profile, I'm looking at the different majors, the different academics, GPA requirements. You can all find that every single institution you're going to be looking at, they'll all have kind of the general student profile of where students' averages are and things like that. If your student is fitting that exact average, that's why I would say you'd be the local match. Something that's maybe within 2 or so hours, not to call out a safety school, but again, something that's local that that pretty confidently will be a good fit, as well as, would likely get in academically. Then we have the next tier, that's the slight reach. Those are the schools that might be a bit larger, or again, maybe your academic caliber might be a little bit towards the medium or low end of what the school is saying, but I always say, never knock it till you try it, still go for them, and just, again, keep that open mind. And then after that, then the big one is the big dream. Now, for me, I grew up in Central Jersey, directly in between Princeton and Rutgers, so for me, yeah, those would be big dream schools where, you dream of rooting on their teams, or schools where, academically, where you're falling, and maybe it's definitely out of your reach. I definitely was not a student academically for Princeton University, but, a girl could dream. So keep some of those things in mind. When it comes to, again, narrowing it, I definitely think having a solid 2 to 3 schools in each bracket is pretty reasonable. I think with nowadays how easy it is to apply, that it definitely is doable to be applying to, more schools rather than not. And again, I'm not saying double digits in the 15, 20s, that's definitely a little bit much. But 2 to 3 in each range, so if we're looking between like 5 to 10 schools, it's usually a pretty good range, especially if we're fitting them into these slightly different brackets. Now, a big thing about the college process is the lingo. When it comes to things, I think there are times where I am having conversations with families and they have no idea what I'm actually trying to say. So I think being aware of the different languaging that we are using on the college admissions side can definitely be helpful, not only for you as a parent, but also to help your student, because when it comes to our emails, yeah, we're gonna use our admissions lingo in the emails, and will that make sense to a 16, 17-year-old who's reading it? Maybe not, but maybe you as a parent having a little bit more knowledge, some of those things can definitely just be a bit more helpful. Now, taking a lot of these from College Board, on College Board they have even more of like a glossary and dictionary, but I think these are some of the ones that, in my opinion, are pretty neat to know. Now, first is the admissions process, and honestly, every step from here until your student graduates high school and then enrolls at a university and moves in, that is the admissions process. Everything from going on tours to submitting their application to filing the FAFSA, doing financial aid, this entire big situation that we're in right now is the admissions process. Now, another one to be really aware of is different types of bachelor's degrees. I deal with this pretty primarily, again, because of my specific work within our students in the arts, not to be confused between Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science, and Bachelor of Fine Arts. I think sometimes people want to think that because, there's art in the title versus science, that that exactly means what that program is dedicated towards. But for example, you can get a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, you can get a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. So those types of things, and I want to make it clear that when it comes to those different areas, Usually it's referring to the amount of coursework that's actually dedicated towards the major. That's the way I like to think of it. So for us at Manhattanville, I work with students in our arts programs. We have a Bachelor of Art in Art and a Bachelor of Science in Art. Now, essentially within that, I know, a bit of a question mark there. So with that, within the Bachelor of Arts, the program is going to be focusing, yes, on art as a whole, but you're going to have more general education and liberal arts requirements. For example, for us, we specifically have 90 liberal arts requirements, with then the rest being up what's going to make up your major to graduate with 120. Bachelor of Science only requires 60 credits of liberal arts studies. So you have more flexibility and freedom to kind of focus even more on that specialized major in art. Then last but not least is then Bachelor of Fine Arts. Within those programs, they are especially very, very specialized and focused in their areas. For us, we have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Musical Theater. Those students every single day are singing, dancing, and acting. They are taking 30 liberal arts credits to also fulfill their other degree, and they're, again, really specialized, focused in that study. So just want to make sure that's clear, because I know when I say Bachelor of Science in Art, people go, wait, that makes no sense. It's not actually the science part of it, but again, it's kind of that different area. Now, after that, we've got things like class rank. You're going to have some institutions that are going to look at that within the admissions process, looking at GPA, class rank, and things like that. Now, essentially, class rank, I don't actually know if we do it here at Tuckahoe, but within there is essentially when you're going to go through and look at the different GPA. And in terms of your student, if they are 4.0, they're likely going to be more at the top of the class and have a higher class rank. Some institutions really look at that. A lot of institutions, luckily, are kind of moving away from that and going towards holistic review processes, but that's just something to be mindful of, that some institutions might be asking about that. After that, we also then have down the bottom, it says Coalition App and Common App. These are two more uniformed application processes that I personally recommend using, especially I tell my students, if you're thinking of applying to more than 3 to 5 schools, using these applications are a little bit easier, especially when it comes to the college counselors, trying to send documents. It's essentially, rather than having to fill out an entire application over and over and over and over and over again, you essentially fill out a lot of the meat of the application one time, and then it's also easier for the counselors to send supporting documents like recommendation letters and school transcripts over to the institutions, again, rather than having to go to each individual university's profile. Couple other things is demonstrated interest. This is one thing that definitely I know some universities really track when it comes to the application process, or even just when it comes to the appeals process and financial aid things later down the line. Demonstrated interest essentially is the different things that we're going to look at to show how much a student is actually interested in attending. So for us, we would look at, how many times have they actually visited campus? Are they someone who interacts with our emails and actually is calling us back, texting us back when we send out things? Have they come to our events, let alone, again, have they engaged with their counselor or with the university as a whole? Again, those are just different ways to track it, and a lot of institutions are tracking that for not only their admissions decision, but even later on down the line when it comes to submitting, financial aid appeals. If I know a student more, I can advocate for them more, so it kind of also shows in that area. Then we also then have FAFSA. I know we're going to talk about FAFSA a little bit later as well, but FAFSA, as we know, FAFSA, waiver students who apply for financial aid. The government kind of tracks, and then all of our, I'll let Julianne talk about it more in depth, actually. I was like, I can't do that part. And then financial aid, which again, we will speak about a little bit later, but it's the different things encompassing different grants, loans, and different options and different ways to make it more affordable to attend an institution. And then last but not least is waiting lists. Now, a lot of schools are kind of moving away from this when it comes to the school as a whole, but some schools still might have waiting lists when it comes to certain programs. Essentially, a waiting list obviously is when a student is applying and they might not be admitted right away, but it's also not a no. I will say that being on a wait list is not a bad thing. I think a lot of people take it as a negative, but it's not necessarily a no. It's just a, we'll wait and see a little bit more. Some schools will waitlist obviously at the admissions part, but some schools will waitlist at specific program areas. I know for us specifically, we'll possibly waitlist for some of our more selective programs like our performing arts programs or nursing or things like that, but students still might be admitted academically, but still be waiting for that specific program that, again, is a little bit more specialized. Okay, now decision types. This is a huge part into the next stage, which is essentially the timeline portion of the admissions process. Now, the 3 main things to be aware of are early decision, early action, and rolling admissions. Now, to explain a little bit about what these are, all universities kind of have different ones. Some have all of them, some have only a few. Us at Manhattanville, we have early action and rolling admissions. But just to explain what they all are, early decision essentially is the chance to apply earlier, but it is then a binding decision. So a lot of times you're going to have some larger, like D1 schools, a lot of them will have early decision, or even some more selective schools as well. in early decision, you're applying usually between now and sometime between October or early November. But downside slightly is that it is a binding contract. So if your student applies early decision and if they are admitted to that university, they are legally obligated to attend. If for some reason you don't attend, then there's extra fines and a whole lot of monetary things that I don't understand. And though there is a perk that yes, your student is in that school earlier, but when it comes to early decision, definitely don't take that application process lightly. That would be maybe the only like institution that is your student's absolute dream school type of thing. Because when it comes to early decision, often when students are admitted early decision, they do not have any scholarship information or any financial aid or additional grant and loan information. So again, you are, hopefully maybe in that dream school, but still have a lot of that financial stuff to figure out, and that could be a problem down the line. Now, after that, we have early action. This is personally my favorite application decision because it is still the benefit of your student being able to know if they are into a college early. Early action applications, again, usually similar window to early decision where it's going to be between now and around mid-November or first week of December, give or take, but it still gives you the freedom to choose. So essentially students will know a bit earlier if they're into an institution and admitted, possibly with some scholarship information, but then there's still the freedom to kind of choose and look at their different options. Again, that's my personal favorite, and I always recommend that to my students when I'm working with them because again, it's the benefit of you knowing early, possibly as early as winter break, but still, again, the freedom to look at all of your, eggs in a basket. Then after that, we'd have rolling admissions. Rolling admissions essentially is that once applications are coming in, our offices in admissions will review them on a timely manner. Most schools have policies that are, within 2 to 3 weeks, give or take. And we'll just continue to admit and roll and give you those decisions in a timely fashion as they're coming in. Now, some things are another benefit to some of these different things is that often when students are applying early decision or early action, there may be slight incentives such as additional scholarships or priority within secondary housing, things like that. So again, just kind of looking at the different options at different universities, outweighing the costs and negatives. Yeah.
Could you expand a little bit about early action? We had heard that when you do that, you can kind of get the colleges to compete a little bit because you're not making a firm choice. And you can, when I say compete against each other, about how much financial aid that they'll offer you.
Correct. So with benefit of early action, at least I know I can speak for our own experience at Manhattandale. When our students are applying early action, they often are going to have their decisions. I mean, this last year we had decisions out, a lot of them by Thanksgiving, between Thanksgiving and New Year's is when we're going to have decisions. Often you're also going to get some scholarship info up front. So the fact that you already have a kind of starting idea of different costs, it is then easier to then look at other institutions and be like, well, we already have this package from this school, and that's still just the starting packages. Now, the next step to that is going to be when it also comes to financial aid, and then often, again, students who are applying early action are going to have their entire package earlier than those who are applying in the later end of the cycle. So essentially, it does give families more leverage to kind of make those decisions and to essentially, do cost comparisons and, what's the word? Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
That's fair.
To kind of do some of that competition and comparing. So it does give you the opportunity earlier on to start to kind of understand all the numbers and then compare and contrast with other universities. And again, as we've mentioned, kind of leverage certain offers over others. So then next thing we have is just some admissions deadlines. Now I will say these are specific to Manhattandale, though they do kind of fit within the standard early decision, early action versus the rolling admissions aspect of things. So again, as we mentioned, that early action and early decision, you're going to have those applications in earlier between usually October 1st to December 1st. Again, either early decision or early action. For us at Manhattandale, it is the middle of November, just essentially a week before Thanksgiving. Then we also are going to, what did I say in there? Oh, then also to be mindful of certain things like different deadlines. For us, we have priority scholarship deadlines, so if you're applying by a certain point, your student will still be looked at for all potential scholarships. Now, these are just things to also be mindful for all institutions, and I do actually sometimes recommend to my families to almost have a college-specific calendar to keep mindful of all these deadlines. Obviously, again, if your student is applying to 5 to 10 schools, that's 5 to 10 different deadlines to be aware of, let alone everything has different deadlines between application accommodations are due here, scholarships due here. If you have a student who's going into specialized major, they might even have additional deadlines that are outside of the normal university's deadlines. Like say for my students, a lot of times it's their auditions and things like that. So to kind of be mindful of those different deadlines and to find a good way to keep track of them, again, I just recommend almost having a college-specific calendar and a college-specific email for our students as well. That's one thing I say, just make sure they have a nice email, and again, a way to keep organized. After that, we also then have to be aware of is that the national college deadline is still kind of lenient, but May 1st is still what a lot of universities are using. Obviously, within the last few years, there are always things that kind of make or break if we're going to keep to that, but a lot of times, the languaging and things from the universities is still going to be quote-unquote pushing May 1st to really want to make sure we have decisions in by then, so that your student can also be successful when it comes to the onboarding process of then actually enrolling and getting there throughout that summertime. And then last but not least, again, is some different applications, either Common App. The universities will mostly have their own applications on their own websites, Common App Coalition, or again, the university sites as well. Now, a little bit basic, which I know Julianne will go into this a little bit more, is how to apply for financial aid. That is a part of the process pretty early on. Start to kind of gather some of the different documents now. Make sure you have the FAFSA application, and if starting to like upload those different things or be mindful of those different tax documents that you might need to know, and just start possibly researching outside scholarships as well. Obviously, universities are going to have scholarships, financial aid, grants, loans, all those things, but sometimes it is just nice to know about outside scholarships for certain things as well. I can use myself as an example. I know when I was applying to university, I was a double major in musical theater and psychology, and musical theater was my primary major. I was able to look at outside scholarships for, young Black females going into the arts, and certain organizations that wanted to help support that. So things like that to kind of keep in mind as well. And then last but not least is what you can kind of do now. So if your student hasn't already, really start to think about that essay topic for them, what they might want to write about. I always tell my families and my students that, the essay is really the time to tell me about yourself. I'm going to see a lot from the students, from their transcript, from their GPA, the different classes that they've taken, seeing, if they really struggled in science versus math or writing. But the essay is the time to tell me their story. So really have them think about that. Don't be scared to proofread it. I tell my students if they want me to proofread their essay before they officially apply to the college, please do that. Again, I'm here as a resource. When it comes to recommendations, you're going to want to start to make sure that your students have either already reached out to some either your counselors or teachers for the recommendation letters, or to start thinking about that within the next couple of weeks, who they might want to be advocating for themselves in that process. I actually use myself as an example, as someone to keep in mind for a recommendation that you might not always think. A lot of people think, oh yeah, do the teacher you know the best, that you got straight A's in that class. That's a great one. Obviously, they can talk about your student and the way that they perform academically. I have been terrible at science my entire life. Don't know why. Great at math, not at science. Doesn't make sense. My junior year chemistry teacher, I actually had write my recommendation letter because they could talk about the fact that, yes, my grades were anywhere from C's to A's to B's. He really didn't know what I was going to be getting when I got an essay or a test back. But that teacher could talk about how I was constantly going to her for extra help, constantly going for extra hours to go over test corrections, to go over, the assignments when I didn't understand the homework, going for extra time. That's a teacher that could talk about my work ethic as well as the way I performed in the classroom, but could talk about me a little bit more in detail because of that relationship. So if they're not getting a straight in that class, that's fine, but still think about some of those concepts as well. Don't knock out the classes that they might not have done as well, because they might actually be able to write a better recommendation than those who got a straight A in that class. And then also to be mindful of different things like test optional and things like that. A lot of universities are moving to what we call holistic review processes. So we're not just looking at, all of your test scores and all of your grades and GPA. We're looking at the student as the whole, looking at that essay, the recommendation letter, and things like that too. But there are some different institutions or specific majors that are still requiring, those specific standardized test scores from ACT or SAT or even AP test scores. So just kind of also be mindful of what schools might specifically require that, so that we can get some of those tests if we haven't done them already in this fall semester. Before those applications. And I think I've blabbed quite a lot, and that's it for me unless we have questions about anything. Yeah. No. So we can only see the decision type for our institution, but if your student is applying to multiple institutions and possibly, early action at one, rolling at one, we cannot see that information.
On the West Coast, like if someone's applying to some of the youth, like California schools, they seem to have a very different timeline for these deadlines. So it's just kind of hard to balance if you want one school there and some on the East Coast.
Yeah. You want to answer? Oh. It's going to be important for you to look at each school that your student is applying to and potentially make a spreadsheet. Here are the different deadlines, because yes, different regions of the country have different timelines. Remember, you all are starting school at the beginning of September. School has already started in the South for high schools, right? So they're just on, sometimes it's just a totally different timeline. Some colleges on the West Coast start earlier than we do. We're starting after Labor Day. I think you guys are after Labor Day this year. So again, it's really about those schools, and it's just like high school, slight nuances with start times. So checking the deadlines. The other thing, while all the colleges and universities in a general region are pretty good about trying to keep the same date or similar to the same date as others, I'm not looking at what, California and Whittier is doing over on the West Coast, because I don't have a lot of cross of apps with that. So if you are looking outside of a certain region, making sure that you're aware of all those deadlines. And it doesn't mean anything different, it's just that they're on a different pace. May 1st is the deadline though across the country.
Mine wasn't a question, mine was an answer, because my daughter last year applied to California schools, and just so you know, it's also not on the Common App yet. It's a different application for the California schools. The state school systems on a different, you can't use the Common App. And also, what I would do because even here, like South Carolina, was October 15th. A lot of the schools are not November 15th. A lot of the early action schools in the South are October 15th is the deadline. So I would just make a date for each school. Yeah. Even if you just write, like I wrote it in a notebook and wrote each one and then wrote each date, because they're all different, even on the East Coast.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
So when we speak about the scholarship, so the answer from the college, so we present ourselves to them and we are waiting a scholarship. So certain by a specific skill of our kid, does it come a second scholarship or it's just one? This is my question.
So this definitely will vary from institution to institution. I can speak specifically about Manhattanville circumstances that I know I work with a more specialized group of students, so I work with our talent-based students, so our art students, dance students, musical theater. We do have secondary processes for essentially a talent-based scholarship for them, but some institutions do have completely different ways about the scholarship process. So for example, some might have their merit-based award is essentially their talent-based award. It might be higher than what they received academically because it's encompassing both academics as well as their talent. I know for us, we actually currently have two separate ones. So we have their academic-based scholarship, their merit-based award, but then after their audition results, there is options for essentially a talent-based scholarship. So that will kind of really vary truly from school to school, and especially based off those institutions' specifications for like the secondary award.
So do we have to present this secondary, for example? My kid, we will present ourselves like the academic side. Okay, we get the scholarship. So secondary, he's fond of sports, soccer. He thinks he's good. So we need to contact the soccer, for example, the coach of the soccer, just to show my kid or himself like a video or a presentation to get a better scholarship or an additional one?
Yeah, so I actually realized, didn't talk about athletics at all, which I just realized. But when it comes to the athletic portion of universities, there is also often a recruitment process, and this is going to determine also based off of what type of institution they're applying to. For example, when it comes to athletics, you have 3 tiers. You have D1, D2, and D3. Now, if they're applying to a D3 institution, there are no academic athletic scholarships for D3 institutions. If they're applying for a D1 or D2
D1.
Okay, so if they're applying to D1 and D2 programs, then there are athletic scholarships, and there is a recruitment process. So yes, it would be a matter of getting the coaches involved to see your son's sport and see them in action, because they do have their own recruitment process and kind of parameters for what they're looking for as well.
I've worked at Division I schools, Division III schools. My husband was at a Division II school for a long time. If you have a student that is feeling athletically inclined and they feel like they should be being recruited, if they are not currently speaking to Division I school, more than likely they're not going to be, at this point, are you all senior parents? At this point, if they're not already speaking to Division I, the likelihood is very low that they're going to go to a Division I school. Division II schools, yes, you still have that opportunity. The amounts will vary. I want to be very clear about that. Very few Division I and very, very few Division II players will receive a full scholarship. So that I think is important for, maybe you all understand that, but for our students to understand that. What ends up happening at Division II and Division I schools is that there is a pot of scholarship money. Each coach is given a certain amount of money, and they get to decide how that gets dispersed to their recruits for their team. So that will then be, if they are being recruited and you are starting to have those conversations with the coaches, a conversation directly with the coaches. And then the coaches relay that back to admissions and financial aid about how much they're offering. If your student is wanting to make sure that they get out there, make sure that you are contacting now. It may not be too late for some Division I schools. It's worth a try. I did Division III and applied to a couple of Division II schools. But I'm going to say this, because we get a lot of transfers. Manhattanville is a very strong Division III school, and we actually end up getting a lot of transfers from Division I. Don't let that be the only driving force of your student, right? Do not let athletics be the only driving force to make their decision, because, like I said before, this is an investment in a future, and that'll be my next speech, is about Division I and II, and how many high school athletes there are versus how many end up playing to get a scholarship, and then how many actually become pros abroad and domestically, because very few end up doing that. So please, I know it's very hard, and it's a hard lesson for athletes to learn. I'm pointing to me, right? That it is not your only identity and the only thing that's going to drive you. And that's a hard conversation with the 17-year-old who, and then I ended up not playing all 4 years, right? So that's an important piece too. Are there other questions? Yeah. Yes. So the way that most admissions offices review essays is that the admissions counselor is assigned a territory. So Erica has New Jersey, Maryland, DC, and kind of our southern region. She'll read the applications for that territory. So Morgan Adesano is the admissions counselor for Manhattanville, for Tuckahoe and Westchester high schools. She will read your students' essays. So when she meets your student, or if you're applying to Manhattan and they meet their counselor out on the road, that's important, right? Because now we can put a face to the name. And usually, especially smaller schools, are very good at making sure that they remember. And I will say this, even larger schools, if they meet you and your student has made an impression or gone out of their way to try to make an impression, typically that sticks. It's just like us, right? Like, you meet somebody, they make an impression on you. Maybe you don't remember all of the things they said, but you're going to make a note. Our systems are very high-tech. Just like you all are working in high-tech systems with high schools, our systems are very high-tech. Our counselors are able to leave notes. If they meet you at a college fair, they maybe will write something on the back of a notepad, to remind them. But then we put it into the system so that when they pull up your students' files, they can see all of those notes. And so that's a great opportunity, and one that I've seen from my start in admissions to now really help the admissions process and actually help your students too. Sorry, what is our time?
Oh, we have about 5 minutes.
Okay.
I think one question might also be, what are questions that should be asked? Oh, let's make this question. Go for it.
You good?
I was going to ask, what are questions that families should be asking at these meet and greets with admissions counselors, so that when they continue to meet with other representatives, they can ask the right questions?
I have a question about parents putting that list together and what data points. More specifically, here we use Naviance, right? So you go into the guidance and you say, here's my child, here's the GPA, SAT, right? So all the data points, and they put it into the scatter plot, and they go, okay, well, from Tuckahoe, here's who got in, and from all, whatever. So we're sort of putting ourselves in relationship to our school as well as the country. And I'm just curious what your advice is, because I don't know that one particular piece of it, because it changes year to year so much. And then also, with test optional, things like that. So are there other data points like is it called common data set points, or some people don't use Naviance at all, right? They use other, I guess, data points. So when you're putting that list together so that you're not unrealistic, but then you're also not just going by Naviance, I think some students look at that and they go, oh, this is a safety school. And then they don't get in and they're saying, well, wait a minute, Naviance told me this was a safety school. So how would you address that to parents that have all these data points, but sometimes they're not specific enough?
All I can say about, we work with Naviance and we work with SCORE and we work, Manhattan does too and Iona does, is that those are only as good as the AI systems that they run on, right? The data systems that they run on. Do your own research. There's a lot of other websites. bestcolleges.com, there's scholarships360.com, there's all these different ones, Princeton Review, US News and World. I roll my eyes because I think all admissions people have a lot of feelings about all of those rankings, but they are good ways to identify different strengths of the college, what your student might be looking for, or maybe as a parent, what you may be looking for your student, so you can nudge them. Those are all, I wouldn't just rely on Naviance. Naviance is a great system, SCORE is a great system, and in helping identify maybe where you would fit in based on some of that, but it's not the only system, and it's not the only piece of data or opportunity to look at schools that you should look at.
I definitely want to also add on to what Christina said as far as data points. One thing, I am actually going to list a few websites, some that Christina just mentioned, that you can use as you are looking at schools. In our world, we're looking at cross applications, and what cross applications essentially are if students are applying to Manhattanville or Manhattan College, what other like universities or colleges are they also considering? This may have to do, and we'll get into the size, location, the programs, or the support services that these institutions have. One example here is students who are applying to Manhattan and Manhattanville potentially may be applying to St. John's University as well, and here's why. So there are websites just like this that can help students identify other options, maybe options they weren't even considering initially when they started their application process based on XGPA, based on average of SAT or ACTs, or maybe the institution is test optional. Many are. What other institutions, again, have similarities that a student might be interested in and maybe didn't consider. As far as what questions should families and students be asking during meet and greets, traditionally during our visits, sometimes students don't know what to ask, and that is perfectly okay. We do a really great job at just getting, basic information going. What's your name? What are you interested in? What are you doing in high school? Do you play a sport? Are you interested in playing a sport in high school? And then I think that really gets students going. I know that I want to be a lawyer. I'm not sure what type of lawyer, but I know that I also am interested in business. What programs do you offer that might align with those interests? Does your curriculum allow for maybe a double major? Can I minor or concentrate? Can I really dive into different programs at the college? And this is where those liberal arts institutions are going to provide that foundation, but allow students to diversify their area of study. Any other questions?
And I think I just wanted to piggyback also on your question is that, in my opinion, I also want to urge to keep an open mind. I think I'm definitely more right side emotional than I am left side analytical, and looking at different data points and different data sets is incredible, but also again, thinking of the human aspect of it. Obviously, on paper, there are tons of students that can look exactly alike in terms of GPA, where they come from, things like that. But then at the meat of it, we as institutions, especially us smaller schools that have a holistic review process, yeah, students who match on paper are great, but we still want to know the human. We want to know the human aspect, and that student who's going to be a part of our community, who's not just going to match our GPA requirements and averages, that the human side of things, and again, kind of getting those different more intimate details of the experience are also important to keep in mind when you're doing the search. So yes, do that cross-checking, obviously, for, will that student fit in that category likely because of their GPA and different things like that. That's a good place to be, but I don't think have that be the end-all be-all of your search process. Kind of keep some of those different aspects open as well. And then, I don't know, when it comes to what questions to ask, I'm a blabber, so I always say I would rather talk with a family for a half hour and understand everything that they might need from me. I don't know how to answer that, honestly.
I think it's okay to not always know what to ask, and that does happen. What I do encourage students to do, as Erica mentioned earlier, visit. Because the visit opportunities will draw a number of questions. You'll go back home and have more questions. All right, maybe something that you didn't think of on that visit. Some institutions will also offer students the opportunity to sit in on classes. So if you have the opportunity to do that, I encourage that students do pursue those opportunities, because then they're actually learning what students are learning in the classroom, so they can say, this is exactly what I want to do, or this is exactly what I like, this is what I want to see, this is what I want to experience, or maybe the class was too big. I did not get a lot of information. We were just reading from a textbook. It wasn't enough real world experience, whatever it might be. I think this is where questions are going to start coming from. So even as they're meeting institutions during a traditional college visit, and it's just to get a better understanding of what the college offers, that's okay. They may not necessarily have questions right away, but I guarantee as you start to move forward into the process, those questions will come about. As you start to apply, there will be even more questions, and at some point I'm going to recommend not stop asking questions, because even when you think you've made your decision, sometimes we get cold feet, right? We've had a number of students about to start the semester and then turn around and maybe change their mind, consider deferring. So those are other conversations to have, but students can get nervous. So if you have the opportunity to speak with current students, that you do so as well, because those students, having been in your child's shoes, will also be able to offer some advice, or maybe have them think about questions that they didn't initially have when they first started.
Would a family set up a classroom visit with you, with the admissions counselor?
So it does vary with every institution. At Manhattan, for example, we will work with families and the academic department. So we are that linchpin between you and the academic department. And then there are some institutions where the academic department will really take charge. And so sometimes that might happen. So if you are interested, I would always, one, ask if that is possible, and two, how to go about setting up that visit. And then, a member of the admissions team will either kind of walk you through that process and facilitate that communication for you, or direct you and connect you with the person who will be spearheading the initiative. So I know a number of institutions have now posted a virtual tour on their website, so that's readily available. if a tour is booked up, what I would recommend is always calling the admissions office. If you are looking for something, just you and your student, your family, I would always call the institution. Of course, there might be some restrictions with larger institutions, but for the most part, admissions offices are definitely accommodating. So if you are looking for a particular day, it might not be that the office is open, for example, we can always have a student ambassador or a member of the admissions team to be ready to meet you on, said day at said time. Sometimes that might not be possible. Virtual visits are great where you might not be able to take the trip out to certain destinations, but I would always recommend trying to get on campus if you have the opportunity to, just because it is a different experience. I also think if you have the opportunity to visit when there are students on campus, that makes a world of a difference, just because you can see what that day-to-day looks like, oh, awesome, thank you. So I do recommend just getting on campus, seeing the facilities. It's completely different than if it were pre-recorded. So you can see what's happening, you can meet with facilities, you can meet with administration. So even if they have summer programs and it's not your traditional semester, I still think it's a good opportunity to see what day-to-day would look like.
I want to piggyback on that actually, because I definitely fully agree. Is like, in my presentation I said visit, visit, visit. I am such a advocate for the on-campus visit experience and how that truly completely changes. I mean, I can speak from my own experience when I was in my college shirts. I remember walking out of an institution and my mom was like, "Oh, how was it?" And I was like, "We'll talk outside." She was like, "We'll talk outside, Mary Jo, like please." She was like, "Okay." Walk outside, not coming here. Don't know what it was. Got that weird feeling. I was like, it's not place for me. So I would say that yes, the visit experience on campus is pretty crucial, but I think a positive result actually of the pandemic was how many universities truly looked at their visit experience and how it is not equitable. It is not equitable for those who cannot afford to go to school to school to school, let alone flights to get to different institutions. I mean, I know, again, as I've said, I work with students in the arts. I've worked with a good amount of students this year from Texas, Washington State, California, Colorado, who they were not able to come to campus, multiple times to get that experience. So a lot of institutions have really reevaluated how the virtual experience is and definitely have improved upon it. Is it the same as coming and stepping on campus? No, but I think it has improved thank you, tremendously, especially in the last 5-6 years, to try and make it as similar as possible to that on-campus experience, that they're still making sure that they're seeing all major buildings that they need to, that they're still hopefully getting student experience. I know for us with our virtual experience, we do have a virtual tour and we will have one of our student ambassadors on there to give their kind of their testimonial and speak specifically to the student experience, so they're still getting that kind of one-on-one student-to-student aspect as well. And I know you mentioned you're looking at some California ones, so I can imagine that the virtual will definitely be a little bit easier. So I think it is something that, especially now compared to 5, 6, 10 years ago, is a lot. It's improved tremendously. And that, again, just goes to show, I think, what Evelyn said is that, a lot of times the admissions representatives are the key people to other people as well. So even more so if you're looking at schools that are farther away where it's going to be harder to get on campus, definitely, again, really use your admissions counselors and representatives, because, again, I feel like sometimes I am the guide to get to everybody else you might need to. So really use us as much as possible, again, because, again, the more that we know, the more that we can help you and make it a better experience for you and your family too. Yeah, so if it is a virtual experience, it would be the same as if someone was coming on campus, just technically usually a slightly different coding, but yeah, it would still be tracked as, demonstrated interest, that they were on campus in virtually and things like that, and then they had questions, yeah. Awesome, I think we have to move on.
Yep, any other questions? Spanky?
I love undecided personally. In my experience, an undecided student has the entire world at their feet. They can really, when they're coming in, for us, technically undecided is, I think, technically our most popular program. About half our students are applying undecided. They have the benefit within those first few years to really search and look at different options. I know for us, we actually will have an academic advisor work with them and make their first schedule for them, putting them in a lot of intro level classes of some of our more popular majors, say like marketing, business, communication, psychology, seeing if any of those pique their interest. I think there's definitely a benefit to kind of keeping that that door open rather than getting into a bucket and starting to take a couple classes that they don't actually like. And though a lot of schools, especially I know we are pretty easy within the first year or so, even until they are required to declare by the end of sophomore year, to kind of still switch in between, but sometimes just keeping that plate open as undecided makes it a little bit easier on the student, and again, just kind of takes that pressure off of them having to decide, you know, at 16, 17 years, not sure what they want to do with their life yet.
I would agree there aren't any cons to undecided. I think that if students are not sure or they're considering, you know, a few different programs, that they should come in undecided to truly explore those programs and what that might mean for them. The one thing that I would really encourage families to consider are specific programs such as engineering, or maybe students are going to consider a academic partnership with if they're looking to pursue you know, physical therapy postgraduate program, or looking into medical school, what programs institutions may offer that will strongly encourage them to make decisions right away, and when that might be. Manhattan, as an example, while our School of Engineering does offer an undecided track, and many students do opt into that undecided track within engineering, they are still going through our Intro to Engineering course. And that is a 2-semester course within their first year that we strongly encourage, so that they have the foundation in engineering, but also will then be able to move forward in the curriculum, as it is very sequential. So it is imperative that they do start in the School of Engineering. The other thing here is, if they don't like engineering, it's a lot easier to transfer out than it is to transfer in. So that is the only piece of advice I would give. If these are specialized programs that students are looking into, that you consider when students should be declaring those programs then.
I think most things within like the STEM fields or the arts are going to be those ones. So like engineering, nursing, you know, musical theater, dance. Some universities, the education tracks are very set, but a lot of times if they're interested more in like the humanities or social sciences, those are going to be a little bit more flexible to work with. But yeah, they are some of those more specialized tracks, primarily again within STEM or the arts. Those are some of the only ones that we have to kind of really think critically ahead of time what the likelihood is that we want to pursue that.
All right, we'll take a 5-minute break. We'll come back for some conversations around financial aid. We're very excited to have Ms. Schwartz here, who's the Executive Director of Student Financial Services for Manhattanville. She's here to present and also answer some of your questions.
Thank you. Hello. I feel very short behind this. Well, I am short. I will acknowledge that. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. We've got a lot to cover this morning for sure. And so now we'll move on to financial aid for families. Basically, how are we going to pay for all of this? Which is the first and foremost question on everybody's mind. And I just want to kind of start with what we were finishing up with. What questions should you ask when you start these conversations about college? The question that everybody wants to ask is, how much does it cost? And I'm going to tell you, do not lead with that question. Because what it's going to cost is complicated, it's complex, it's based on a lot of factors. And when your student is starting to look at schools and explore their opportunities, and you start looking at the tuition and fees page on the website, understand that that is not what it's going to cost you. So if you sit down with your student who is looking at Manhattan College or Mercy College, and they say, this is the school I want to go to, and you look at the tuition and the fees page, and you say, honey, you can't afford this. You're shutting the door on a lot of opportunities. So I want to talk to you about what are all of the opportunities out there to pay for school. How does this come together? And kind of get your brain thinking about what you need to look for. This is just an introduction. I'm going to say that as you actually get into the cycle of applying for financial aid, and receiving your award offers from your school, receiving your award letter from your school when your FAFSA is filed. These are all opportunities for the next step in a conversation. So this is just an introduction, but I did want to lead with that. Do not go into this worrying about what it will cost. Yes, it's a concern, but there are a lot of resources, and that comes together actually at the end of, and when you come down to your decision-making process. So I just wanted to lead with that. So with that being said, so what I want to cover and walk you through is getting ready to be successful in this very complex, long drawn-out financial aid process so that you can do it successfully. We're going to talk about the FAFSA, which is the federal financial aid form. We're going to talk about New York State TAP, which is New York State financial aid form. We'll talk about scholarships, some alternate funding sources to consider, and just some basics of borrowing, and then we'll cover questions. These are all topics that are going to come up again as you really get into your college search. So just kind of starting out with how are we going to pay for college, or how do people afford college, right? How do families afford to pay for college? Typically, this is from a survey by MassMutual that came out last year, and they concluded that 45% of funding for college for students comes from the parents, directly from the parents paying into the student's bill, whether it's from college savings plan that the parents have saved for, or they pay out of pocket, or they borrow. 45% is really typically on the parents. 25% comes from scholarships and grants. 20% comes from loans. So if you're wondering what is the average on that, about 20% comes from loans. 8% comes from self-funding. That means students who have saved money for college, students who are working their way through college, students who have the savings or a college account in their own name. That covers about 8%. And then 2% comes from family and friends thinking that students, maybe grandparents, contribute to their college. So this is where average people fall in the scale of how much they pay for college, or how the college bill is split. Should say it that way. There's another way to say that, I'm sure. Skip the. So just talking about getting prepared to be successful with financial aid. So, financial aid, the FAFSA application will become available in the fall, but at this point you want to start thinking about what do you need to do to get prepared or be ready to start filling out all the applications and things that you need to do to be ready to apply for financial aid. And one of the things is to make sure you are up to date with your income taxes. If you haven't filed your 2023 income taxes, that will prevent your child from getting federal financial aid. That can also prevent your child from getting institutional need-based aid or state need-based aid, because that FAFSA application is used not just for federal aid, but for other forms of financial aid. So if you have not paid your 2023, yes, we're talking about 2025, 2023 income taxes, you still have outstanding issues with your income taxes, you do need to get your income taxes up to date and get on a good track with that. Clear up any credit score issues. So if you are looking to borrow money in a Parent Plus loan or co-sign for your child to borrow money for school, your child needs you to have good credit. So if you have credit score issues, work on cleaning them up. If you're not able to, work on identifying another family member who could be a cosigner for your student. So you want to have this prepared, talked about, discussed in your family ahead of time so that you don't hit a wall because the time has come, but you haven't had these discussions yet. Review your budget and your resources. Like I said, don't ask up front, don't worry up front what the sticker price is on school. But you do want to go into this knowing what you can handle. You know, can you handle making monthly payments to a school of $200 a month? Can you handle making monthly payments to a school of $2,000 a month? You know, those are big, that's a big difference. You need to start feeling aware and comfortable with what your budget is and what your own flexibility is where it comes to financially supporting your child and paying for school. Identify your own financial goals. We're getting into our age where our children are going off into college. We're also starting to look at the balance in our retirement accounts. Those are two things. We're also looking at our parents who may need to have some financial support. You know, we're as parents coming into that generation of being in the middle of taking care of our parents and our children, and also have to take care of ourselves. So identify your financial goals and how does that fit into what you can do for your child. So with all of that information, start thinking about some realistic expectations for yourself as to what you can do to help your child pay for school. And this is an opportunity, if you haven't had discussions with your child yet about finance, budget, interest, borrowing, this is the opportunity to start having these discussions with your child before the decisions about school need to be made, because then the emotions come into it, but involve your child in understanding what your bills are, what your budget looks like, what your goals are, what your needs are. So how much you make. Does your child know how much you make? Many don't. Many don't know that. Do they know what your car payment is? Many students don't know that. This is the opportunity to start sharing these adult pieces of information with your student, so when the financial decisions need to be made, they have a little more context. And then student contributions, these, I want you to take this information away and use this to your advantage, reviewing the student resources. So students, if they are working and earning some money, are they saving some money? Do you have expectations that they save some money for school? They need to have a realistic understanding of where they get their money from and what are they doing with it. Evaluate their spending habits. Do they stop at Starbucks every day on the way to school? Do they? Is that a good spending habit for a college student? Maybe not. At this point, they can, going into the senior year of high school, they can create a budget that includes a savings plan so they can start learning how to squirrel a little bit of money away. That is to train them not to be so impulsive and cut down on the impulse buying. And again, setting realistic expectations and teach them how to look things up, compare prices online, do a little budget, impose a budget for themselves so that they understand how all these pieces fit together, and encourage them to ask questions. So just kind of setting the stage for being successful in this transition. Then kind of looking into other aspect of paying for college is knowing where's the money coming from. Aside from parents and students who we just talked about, there's the federal government, and that's where the FAFSA comes in. From the FAFSA, you'll get grants, loans, and federal work study. New York State government also gives out money in terms of grants and scholarships. There are institutional funds, which we'll talk about as we get further along. There are third-party scholarships, and there are loans. So I want to give you a brief overview of what each of these are so that you can understand that these are available for you, and when these start coming up in your conversations about paying for college, you already have this little bit of information to work with. Okay, so studentaid.gov is the website where you will fill out the FAFSA application, and the student will fill out the FAFSA application. This is your homework, is to go to studentaid.gov sooner rather than later and start getting familiar with the information that is available on this site, because this is the hub where when you start taking out student loans, or the student starts taking out student loans, the student starts getting Pell, they have that relationship with the Department of Education, this is the website where all of their information will be found forever. So once you fill out a FAFSA, or actually I should back up and say, once you create an FSA ID, and the student creates an FSA ID, that same ID is that student's ID forever. I use the same FSA ID that I used when I went to college. Oh my gosh. Don't even say. The same FSA ID, I had to resuscitate that 20 years ago. 20 years ago for myself at one point. Then I had to resuscitate it for my first child and then for my second child. So it's the same FSA ID that you will use and your child will use. So you want to get familiar with this website. It has your FAFSA application. It has information about grants that are available. It has information about the loans that are available, how much you can borrow, what the interest rates are, bless you. And it has also for that student, when the student signs into their account, they will be able to see how much they've borrowed, what their total borrowing is as they go along, and further information about how their loan servicers. There's also information about loan forgiveness on this website as well. If you yourself have student loans that you're interested in loan forgiveness, you'll find information about loan forgiveness on this site. So just a couple tidbits about working with studentaid.gov. So when we get into the FAFSA application cycle, which typically starts October 1st, I have low confidence in I am so sorry, I'm trauma speaking. I have very low confidence in the Department of Education for actually meeting that October 1st deadline this year. I don't know if you've been aware, but it's been a very rough year this past year for the new FAFSA rollout. They redesigned, which is a very nice way of saying, but they redesigned the FAFSA application. It's an online application this past year, and the rollout did not go well. It created a lot of delay, confusion and delay, as Sir Topham Hatt would always say. There's still some lingering issues with the FAFSA that have not been resolved, so I am anticipating that there will be a delay again, but not like what we just experienced. I do think the application will be out before Christmas. I don't believe it will be out on October 1st. So you just want to keep your ear out for when that FAFSA is going to be available, but you're going to know because you're going to be checking the FAFSA, the studentaid.gov website. Yep, and they will send an email. That's right. So student has to create a FSA ID, parent has to create an FSA ID. There is a student portion of the FAFSA, there is a parent portion of the FAFSA. Do not allow the student to do the parent portion. Please do not do your student portion. They are two separate portions of the FAFSA. Each party needs to do their own portion of the FAFSA, and then those will get linked later on when those are processed. You had a quick question?
Is this something you can start before your student knows what school they want to
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the process with financial aid actually has nothing to do with what school your student is going to. So when these applications are available, your student doesn't even have to have decided they're going to school. They're like, no, I'm going to be following the Grateful Dead or whatever it is that they follow these days. Taylor Swift. I'm following Taylor Swift. I'm not going to college. But yes, they can still do their FAFSA application. It doesn't matter. They don't need to know. You can always, so when you do the FAFSA application, it will ask you, what schools do you want to apply to? And you could put in 1 or you can put 20, but you can always go back and change it.
I had heard that parents have to submit tax returns, is that true?
So this is the update with the new FAFSA application that's different from previous. So if you've done a FAFSA a couple of years ago, you did have to input information from your tax return. Now what happens is your IRS tax data is linked directly from the IRS, so it does use your yes, it does use the parent's tax return information. That is the basis of determining aid eligibility. They look at what the parent's income is to determine financial need of the student. How much financial need does this student have? So that's all calculated based off of the parent income. And if the student also has a tax return, it will also be calculated into that SAI index. So that is all part of that. I saw a question. Yeah?
I have two questions.
Yep.
What, because I did it for my older daughter the first year.
Yeah.
And if you have two parents that are making working class parents,
Yeah.
you're not getting any money. You're going to get the $5,500 loan.
Yeah.
But the interest starts right away. Like,
Yeah, it depends on what kind of loan you're offered, right?
right. So what is the point of doing the FAFSA if they're not really giving you it? And what is the point of doing it if you're not going to get like much?
If you're not going to get Pell, yeah, yeah. So the FAFSA, it does give the student the access to federal student loans. That's the only way to get a federal student loan. So if your student is going to need the loan, the student needs to fill out the FAFSA. That's one reason why. The federal student loans are going to be the lowest interest rate loan option out there that's available for a student. The student loan is in the student's name and it requires no credit check. So of all the loans that are out there available, unless you have something I don't know about, the federal student loan would be the first one that you want to get. And then if you need more, then you pursue other options. So that's the first reason why you would fill out a FAFSA. Other reasons why, a major reason that is often not considered or overlooked by parents is that institutions like Manhattanville, Manhattan College, we also calculate need-based aid based on the information we get from the FAFSA. So our threshold for need-based aid is a lot higher than Pell. So you may not be Pell eligible. You may have an SAI index of 15,000, which would not make you Pell eligible. However, for our calculations for need-based aid, you would get need-based aid. So you don't know what, and I don't know what our model looks like for next year, but you don't know how the institution you're applying for calculates that need-based aid. So you don't want to leave money on the table by not filling out the FAFSA. So that's the other reason why. Also scholarships, if you are going to pursue scholarships, or the student's going to pursue scholarships, they may need to have that FAFSA information to verify income. They may have a different need-based threshold. They may not even have a need-based threshold, but it will lock you out of eligibility for certain scholarships if you do not have a FAFSA. Those are pretty compelling reasons for me to go ahead and fill it out. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't do anything to your credit score. It doesn't hurt you in any way. But those are all available funds on the table. I wouldn't leave money on the table just because I didn't want to do the form. Yeah?
Does the FAFSA application take into account where you reside? For instance, the cost of living here is so much higher than, say, Indiana.
No, it doesn't. It's one calculation for the whole country. So the SAI index that calculates Pell does not vary. So a student who, for example, lives in New York, does their FAFSA application, they get their return on their FAFSA application, and they know what their Pell award is, and then they move to another state with, if they move to California where it's higher, they're not going to get more money because they've moved. Or a student coming from Arkansas to New York doesn't get more money. It doesn't matter where you live. They use the same calculation all across the country. Yep. I know, right? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, you do. Thank you.
Clarify for those of us who haven't done this, if the parents file their taxes together, joint,
Yep.
is it one account for the parents, or each parent should do a
Each
FAFSA?
parent, every contributor to the FAFSA has to have own account. So each parent will have an account, the student will have an account. When you get ready to do these applications, this is why I shared the slide. I gave you the homework of checking out the website. There are also a lot of YouTube videos made by FSA.gov that explain 2-minute clips, the details of filling out the steps of filling out the FAFSA application that I think might be helpful. Was there another question?
Yeah, I have two more questions. Is there like a set amount, like if families make under 200,000, they're going to get more than the 5,500, or?
Well, the loan amount, so let me talk about the loan, what you get out of your FAFSA. So federal student loans are offered to students. Like I said, there's no credit check. It is simply because the student has filled out a FAFSA and the student is eligible for federal aid. The first year a student is offered $5,500. Does not matter what the income is. It doesn't matter what the school costs. That is what every freshman student in the country is offered, $5,500. You can't ask for more. They're not going to give you more. It's not an optional thing. You're offered $5,500. You don't have to take the full $5,500, but you're not going to get more than that as a freshman student. The second year, the student will be offered $6,500. And then the third and fourth year, they're offered $7,500. So those are just the FAFSA loans. And the loans may be split into, brain fart. Thank you. You know how a word just goes out of your head? I'm like, no, I just started financial aid, sorry. Subsidized and unsubsidized, yeah, thank you. So there is a need-based component to federal loans where a loan may be split into a subsidized portion and an unsubsidized portion. So if your student is ranked with need, they'll be offered a portion of their loan as subsidized. That means that the government is paying the interest on that loan while the student is a student. So the student can take out the subsidized portion in their freshman year, pay it back in the senior year when they win the lotto, and they don't owe anything but that principal that they borrowed. There's no interest calculated on it. So the other portion of a loan would be the unsubsidized, and for those loans, they do calculate interest based on the date of disbursement. So the fall, you get your fall portion dispersed, that'll start calculating interest in the fall. And then spring, you get the spring portion dispersed, that'll start calculating. So those will roll the interest, and then at the end of the student's academic career, all those loans are bundled together into one repayment, the subsidized and unsubsidized, plus all of the accumulated loans over the years. But that division of subsidized to unsubsidized is need-based. That is that portion of that. The other thing that the FAFSA application gives you access to is the federal Pell Grant. There is no magic number I can give you that tells you that, if you have XYZ income, number of household, that you're going to get Pell or you're not going to get Pell. It has to go through the FAFSA calculation. I was just talking to a mom a few minutes ago how there's a proprietariness to that calculation. We can get close to it, but we don't actually really know what the magic triggers are in it. FSEOG is a grant for high-need students that can be up to $4,000 per year. The FAFSA application gives students access to federal work study, and the amount available to students will vary from school to school, but that's a way for a student to get some work experience on campus. They don't have to travel far to have their job, and they can earn some spending money on campus. There's also the Teach Grant, which is available through, and you do need to go through studentaid.gov, fill out a FAFSA and an additional application for the Teach Grant. That's up to $4,000 per year. So this starts adding up. Teach Grant is not need-based too. So if your student is a teacher, is going into the teaching professions, they can still get a Teach Grant even if they don't have need. And also studentaid.gov website gives you access to PLUS loans, and those are loans for parents to borrow to help pay for school. And also when students get older into their graduate studies, they can borrow to help with those expenses as graduate students. And then moving on, I'm going to move on to New York State. Just to keep us moving, we can always come back with more questions. So the other site that, the other homework is check out New York State, hesc.newyork.gov, higher education, can't remember what it stands for. I'm having one of those days today. Yeah, HESC. So this is the website where you would go to apply for New York State TAP. And this site, too, is where you can explore other programs that New York State has to offer that help pay for school. Such as New York State TAP gives you, and this is in addition to your FAFSA funds, New York State TAP can give you up to $5,665. And this is, remember, separate application. You're going to do your FAFSA application, then your TAP application. ETA, which is the Enhanced Tuition Award, that requires a separate application as well. And that can give up to $6,000. It's combined with the New York State TAP. Excelsior is a program offered by New York State that gives students access to SUNY or CUNY schools tuition free. There is an Academic Excellence Award that is based on a nomination by your high school. So your high school guidance counselor would nominate your student who's excelled in particular classes for Academic Excellence Award, and that could be up to $1,500. That one you don't need to apply for. There is the STEM program offered by New York State, and what that does is it gives you an amount which is up to the SUNY or CUNY undergraduate tuition, and then that can be used at other institutions. It doesn't have to be a SUNY or CUNY. And then there's the teaching incentive grant, which is for students who are studying teaching professions, and that goes up to the SUNY tuition rate. Lots of money available.
This only is applied if your student goes to a New York State college or university. It does
correct.
not travel across state borders.
Lines. That's correct. Thank you for pointing that out.
Sorry.
I forgot to put that on my slide.
Private and public
public, yeah.
schools. There are some of these programs where some private schools do not participate. So Excelsior is one. Some of the STEM options.
Yep.
And some of the teach incentive grants. So that'll be important for you to look at. But we live in a state that is very generous if you stay in state with
Right.
your students, right? And there's a lot of opportunities and options in different schools, whether they stay close to home or decide to go to the Adirondacks or whatever. So
Yeah.
I really encourage you to have your students look at in-state schools, because there is a lot of money that is available if your student stays in state.
Yeah, so that is one. Yep. These are awards.
These are awards.
These
They're
are
grants.
awards. Yeah. So this is all free money. Just do the application, and
Not all is based on need.
it's not all based on need. Some of it is based on the field of study for the students, like the STEM and teaching are really based on the math, science, and teaching, engineering.
And teaching is for students that are going to be teaching. There are some stipulations to receiving that grant after. So if your student has to, I don't want to quote it because I can't remember exactly, but there are specific stipulations to what they need to do in New York State as a teacher, typically. To do
Right,
it,
right.
Or it turns into a loan.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. Same thing with the federal
Teach grant, correct.
There are very specific stipulations that if your student is planning to be a teacher, that they need to abide by to keep that money from turning into a loan.
Right. So you want to read the fine print.
Please read the fine
Yeah.
print, as you do with any government programs or assistance. Please make sure you read that and make sure that your student understands that before you go ahead and accept it. But it is great.
All right.
Is this also, the question was, is this also for the fall? Yes, you can,
Yeah.
You can apply for this at
After
any,
the FAFSA.
after the FAFSA.
Yeah. So you want to do your FAFSA application first after you've done your FAFSA application, because New York State requires you to do a FAFSA application to access state funds. Then you may do your state applications.
There's also federal repayment for healthcare workers who work. I'm a nurse practitioner.
Correct.
Some of my colleagues who are physician assistants and NPs, they're on loan forgiveness programs.
Yes.
And it's a huge chunk of their student loans that are paid back, but you have to serve the majority of your clinical practice in underprivileged areas. So like the greater New Haven area qualifies. I work at Yale, but where I'm located, because of my clinical location, it does not. But that's another thing to look at if kids are interested in that.
Definitely, and it is on that FAFSA website. I saved that for my graduating seniors presentation about loan forgiveness, mainly because the political climate is variable, and we don't know what's going to happen with those loan forgiveness programs 4 or 5 years from now. And it's actually, you have to be in repayment of a loan for a certain period of time before repayment, or before forgiveness is triggered. So we're looking at something that's way down the road. So yes, definitely it is something to be aware of. Just be aware that things may change as well. So just don't make decisions based on something, for a career choice, for example, based on loan forgiveness. I think I saw it. Was there a question over here? No? Okay. I'm going to move on then. So those are the applications. Those are the key applications that you want to kind of get a jump on. Do those in the fall. Your child doesn't have to have figured out what school to go to yet. That's the first step. So just some other things to understand are going to be your financial aid offer. So now this comes into play when your child starts applying to colleges. So each institution will send their students, their prospective students, out a congratulations letter, which says, congratulations, we are so happy to welcome you into XYZ institution. We are so pleased to offer you this presidential scholarship for $20,000 a year. And they'll send you the letter. What they're telling you about is called a merit scholarship, or an institutional scholarship that is coming right from that institution, and it is specific to that one institution. It's not your full financial aid, because it's not including your federal aid, it's not including your state aid, but usually what happens is you'll get your initial financial aid offer through admissions upon acceptance, and that's going to give you the first kind of checklist of grants and scholarships that are offered by the institution. So it'll be merit aid. When you hear merit, that means it is based on grades. So that the institutions will have tiers. So the A students will get the highest tier, B students will get the next step down, and so on. They may offer other grants or awards, and some may be based on financial need or participation, like Erica was talking about, secondary applications that you may need to fill out. We have some of those where we have a volunteer program where students commit to community service hours, and while they're doing those hours, they also get a scholarship or grant that goes along with that service every year that's payable. So you're going to see all of these types of things being offered to you by various institutions. We talked a little bit about athletes, and I just want to kind of reiterate that athletics is not a basis for scholarships at all in Division III schools. In fact, when I'm talking to my coaches and they have a student that they are working with who is an athlete, and the student is appealing their financial aid award, they're asking for more money, I remind my coaches, do not tell me make sure the student does not tell me what a great soccer player they are, because we have very, very, very strict rules we must follow by NCAA, and we cannot give money. We cannot discuss giving money to students based on athletics. So keep the athletics out of the conversation, please, with Division III schools. Division I, Division II, NAIA and NJCAA schools can offer scholarships to incoming students. If your student, like Christina pointed out earlier, at this point as a senior, if they are going to a Division I, they would know already that they are on that pipeline because of their recruitment process. Division II, they do still have some wiggle room. And then we'll talk about some free money, which is other grants or scholarships that are not FAFSA or New York State, so there's a lot of money out there. These are funds for school that you don't have to pay back. And it's like having if a student works on getting scholarships, it's like they have money in their pocket. They can take it to any school that they apply to. They just have to let that school know that they have those funds. They usually require an application that might include an essay. They may have to share their transcript. They may have to share references. They may have to share information from their FAFSA, proof that they filed their FAFSA, and share their SAI number with the school. And it does require a little bit of work on the student's part, but I bring this to your attention because in my role and in my years in my role, I see very, very, very few students actually come in with money in their pocket with a scholarship. It's a very low percentage. I feel like it's less than 10%. Yet I know statistically, and I know because I do all of my reading in my field, and I get all the scholarship lists, that there is so much money available out there that goes unclaimed, unawarded every single year. And then when I do have a student who has done the work, it's like once they get that first scholarship, they're like, oh, that was easy. So I get those, those super earners, who come in and they have 5 scholarships and they stack them up. And I have a handful of students who have figured out how to apply for scholarships, and they do it every year, and they come in with a ton of money in their pocket, but they do the work and they figured out how to do it. So I just want to bring this to your attention because it's I feel like it's overlooked or maybe not discussed so much, but there's money out there that's free. You had a question?
I noticed when I look on various websites for schools, I could be wrong, are the schools, out-of-state schools, are they trending away from doing this in-state and out-of-state tuition, or is that like it was years ago where there's big gaps?
You're going to see, it depends on whether you're looking at public schools or private schools. So where you see in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition, the state, those types of tuition tiers, those are state schools. And sometimes what gets confusing is we don't realize we're looking at a state school because it's out of state. It's not a name that we're familiar with, but it's in Indiana. The website looks beautiful. They've done a great job presenting this beautiful campus. It doesn't look like a state school, and then when you get into that tuition and fees page, that is your tell. So when you see the tuition tier like that, that means that they're a state school. Private schools don't have tuition tiers based on the state residency. Did you have another thought to that, Christina?
We were just having this conversation
with a parent. If you're looking at one of the Power 5 schools, if you're looking at an Alabama, and you're looking at their main campus, you're looking at a Penn State main campus, there is not much right now discrepancy in state versus out of state when we're talking about flagship large state universities. So that I think is important. I think that may be what you're seeing because they don't need to worry about that. If they're a state student, let's take Clemson, they're going to get South Carolina aid, so they're not going to worry that much about making their tuition different at their prime, flagship school. Same thing with Penn State. In fact, Penn State, a lot of Pennsylvania state students don't get in to the flagship Penn State State College campus their first try. They get told you can start at Bradford, and then come your sophomore year, reapply or transfer in your junior year. So you're really working in a different tier, a different level of political complexities if you're looking at some of those flagship schools. But that's where you're going to work with the counselor. They should be very upfront. I mean, Eric can tell you, she sits next to them at college fairs. They're going to be upfront with you about what that looks like. That's the nice thing about state schools, is that they really have to make sure that they're very transparent. We're very transparent. Manhattan's very transparent, but they are required by law to be very transparent. But that may be where you're seeing some of those not big swings in state and out of state costs.
Yeah, definitely. And so going back to scholarships, talking about scholarships, trying to look for scholarships, your students have been inundated with targeted ads and emails, marketing emails for these scholarships. All you have to do is just give us your cell phone number, your email address, all of that. And no essay scholarships, they're out there, believe me. But the best scholarship resources actually come from right here in your own school, pardon me, in your guidance office. You want to think about this in terms of the least competition. There are, you have a small school here. There are, excuse me. This is where I'm talking too much now. So sorry. So the scholarships that are, you want to finish for me?
Using your guidance office?
As the first stop to finding scholarships. And the reason why we say that is because they have knowledge of previous years and students that have applied to different things and been successful in applying to those scholarships, maybe have an idea of what that scholarship foundation is looking for. They may also be thinking of opportunities for your specific student, because they do receive emails and information from local places, and then obviously national scholarships. They're a great first resource. Another one is if some schools, some colleges and universities do list recent scholarships that students have brought in, and those foundations. I also encourage, if you're involved in, like if you are religious or a part of a community organization, speaking with them. A lot of them have college assistants or, different people that you can go to. If your student works, I'm from upstate New York, so Wegmans, if you worked at Wegmans when I was in high school, they had a scholarship program, and so everyone tried to work at Wegmans, right? But those are great options. I feel like Trader Joe's does something like that. So making sure, and I will say this also, I worked for a country club up in Syracuse, and they had a fund for employees that were going to college, so you could apply for that. It was much nicer because there were only about 5 of us that had to apply, and so I think what they ended up doing is probably giving us all a little bit. But those are things too. So those are important pieces to look at, and not just rely on the internet. Please don't just rely on the internet. That's
because it's flashy. It's like, get $10,000 a year, or just all you have to do is give us your email address, $10,000 a year. Those are lotteries. What those are actually are marketing schemes. They're just trying to get your contact information, not to market scholarships to you, or to the student, but to market things like their first credit card, their first car loan. They are getting that demographic information to the most important consumer group in the country, and your student is just handing it to them. So that's when you see those no application scholarships, all you have to do is give us your contact information. That's really what it is. I want you to help your student Zero down on the smaller pool of competition. That's where your local scholarships really come in, and that is where you are most likely to be successful. So start with your guidance office. And like Christine was saying, community foundations, any organization that your student or your family has participated in, volunteered in, all of those are places to ask if they have a scholarship available. And if you as a parent belong to a professional organization, you're a real estate agent, you're a CPA, you're in law enforcement, you're a pipe fitter, all of those organizations, I have seen scholarships come from for students at Manhattanville. Other selective scholarship opportunities, organizations, now this is where the students needs to start doing some thinking. What is the student planning to study? Is the student going to be a CPA? Is the student going to be a nurse? Those organizations also offer scholarships to students in college. So those are places where students can do a little bit of Googling to find the professional organizations for accountants, professional organizations for nursing, professional organizations for physical therapists. Those organizations also provide scholarship opportunities. Ethnicity-based organizations provide an abundance of scholarships. Organizations or associations related to hobbies or interests. Does your student like to ride dressage? Is your student into ballet? Is your student into musical theater and is a female of color? These are all interests, hobbies that can translate into scholarship money. Did you get scholarships for that? You did. Yeah, so Erica's a good example. And scholarships related to distinct qualities or characteristics. Were you born in another country? Your student was born here. Were you born in another country? There may be scholarships available for students who are directly descended from Czechoslovakia, or, and just trying to come up with names. But these are all individual characteristics that may translate into scholarship dollars. And I have some links here, and I'll share this PowerPoint so that it can be shared with you, so you don't need to write anything down. But there are some links here. The Department of Labor offers a scholarship finder tool. Sallie Mae, yes, they do loans, but they also do offer a very good scholarship search site. Scholarships.com, Big Future, FastWeb, Scholarship Owl. These are all some resources, and they actually are scholarship search engines. So it's not that there's just one scholarship attached to each of these links. What the student finds when they get in there is they build a profile for themselves and can start looking for scholarships based on all of those individual characteristics we were just talking about. And this is, I'm going to go back to Erica's suggestion before. She said, create an email account for college stuff. This is my tip too, is create a Google account specifically for your college search information and your scholarship information, and use the tools. Use the calendar. So your student's going to start looking for scholarships and oops, I missed the deadline. Well, you know what? That scholarship happens every year. Put it on your calendar. Put that link right in your calendar for when you want to apply for it next year, because you have 4 years or more that you want to apply for. So use the calendar tools, use the reminder tools, use the task list, and use that email for your college application information and your scholarship information for 2 reasons. One, it keeps it from getting mixed up with all of the other email that the student's getting in their regular email box. And the other reason is when the student is done with it, because inevitably you will get a lot of marketing information attached because you start seeking information, you know this too. They can kill that email account or the Google account when they're done with it. They don't have to live with that type of contact for the rest of their lives, because believe me, if you don't do that, they will keep after you. Because like I said, there's marketing attached to all this. Some search tips to take away real quick. Target scholarships that are more selective, means less competition. Use Google search carefully, using those terms or those characteristics that kind of narrow it down for you. Use those scholarship search sites. Don't overlook the smaller awards. So the bigger the award, the more competition. There are probably close to 50 million students who have put their email address in one of those $10,000 a year for 6 years scholarship things. It hasn't been awarded yet. It's like Publishers Clearinghouse. I don't know if you guys remember that. Sweepstakes. It's the same process. But there's nothing that says that you can't have multiple awards. And this is where I see those high earners or those high winners go after the $100 scholarship for $100 for 4 years, every year for 4 years. Get 5 of them, get 10 of them. There's nothing that says you can't do that. Those scholarships that are for a little bit amount of money are the ones where 20 students have passed and, swiped past that because it wasn't worth their time. It's less competition. You're more likely to get it. So go ahead and do those applications for those little tiny scholarships. Do lots of applications for the tiny scholarships because you're more likely to get them. Make sure you follow, make sure you help your student with this, get them rolling on this. Make sure they're reading the instructions carefully and they're following the instructions and the due dates, because these organizations will throw out your application if you don't, because of the volume of applicants that they have. So you don't want to lose the money just because you didn't follow instructions. Again, save links to your calendar. Never, ever, ever, ever pay money to apply for a scholarship. Never pay money to fill out a FAFSA. Never pay money to fill out a TAP. These are all things that are free and should be free. And when it comes to scholarships, in your application, I would also say, do not put social security numbers in scholarship applications. They may ask for your social security number in order to pay. You can always check the Better Business Bureau to make sure it's legitimate if you have any qualms before providing that, but you should never have to provide a social security number to simply apply for a scholarship. They may want information from your FAFSA. They may want your financial aid report or your SAI report, but you don't need to provide a social security number to apply for a scholarship. And don't give any personal or banking information in an application. So this is an opportunity for you to work with your student to teach some discernment about the types of information it's safe to share, and to develop a winning strategy about going after scholarships. It does require effort, so they're not going to get the first scholarship they apply for. They just have to, this is persistence. You have to teach, there's so many learning opportunities in this process. Teaching them persistence, teaching that it's okay to not win every time, create that Google account to manage your search, do a little self-reflection, create a personal inventory about those attributes about yourself so that it helps guide your search for scholarships. Work on that great essay about yourself, research the scholarship opportunities. The school librarian or your community librarian is a good resource, and apply and keep applying. So these are all takeaways that I'd like for you to work with your student on to develop these skills. And Christina was talking about employment. Other sources to consider to pay for college are some service opportunities like AmeriCorps, National Health Service Corps, Peace Corps, military programs, student jobs. We don't think about it, but a lot of those companies that hire students, Burger King, Target, Lowe's, all of these, just to name a few, they all have scholarship opportunities. So that's another place for that. And then some kids also do GoFundMe to raise some money, maybe for book money. I added up my books. I need $400 for my books. And they do a GoFundMe with their family and friends, and they raise the money that way. And then now we're going to talk about loans real quick, just so you get some basics. There are a couple different loan options out there for families to consider. Now the first loan that is, in my mind, the go-to loan would be the student's federal student loans. These are the loans we talked about a little bit earlier. These are the loans the student gets access to when filling out the FAFSA. It's $5,500 the first year. Remember, it goes up to $65,000, second year $75,000 for the last 2 years. There is also federal money available for graduate schools as well. It's guaranteed to all eligible FAFSA filers, but you don't have a choice of taking more money. You're limited in the amount you can borrow. And then there's the subsidized and unsubsidized portions. That's my go-to because those federal loans are going to offer your student the lowest interest rate available to student borrowers. There's also going to be flexibility in repayment terms. The federal loans offer the tiered repayment amounts based on your income. So you have income-based repayment schedule. That's the word I was thinking of. With the federal loans that you might not get with a private loan. So you have more flexibility with federal loans. But then there are alternative loans that are available. Those are like private loans. Those are Sallie Mae, Chase, Discover are some companies that offer alternative loans that a student can borrow. These require a co-signer with good credit. Remember what I said at the beginning. If you have credit or tax return issues, it's time to clean those up because this is where your student needs that information. And then there are federal loans, Parent Plus loans for parents. That's where a parent can borrow federal funds through that FAFSA website to help students pay for school. And the interest rate tends to be lower than what you can get out in the public market, but you still want to do your homework on that. And then there's private education loans, again, like Sallie Mae, Discover, Wells Fargo, for parent borrowers. And all parent borrowing requires a credit check. So you don't have that guaranteed loan like you do with the student loans. Just real quick, guidance for responsible borrowing: only borrow what you need for school expenses. So this is where at the end you're going to need to work with your financial aid office or your admissions counselors to understand, after all of the financial aid is applied, what is my out of pocket? What do I really have to pay? And that's the thing where I said, remember, don't lead this search with how much does this school cost, because the school cost that you see on the website will be reduced for you based on the aid that your student earns. So it's going to be reduced based on how much Pell, if the student got Pell, that takes some money off of that cost you see on the website. Does your student take out student loans? So that reduces that out of pocket a little bit more. Did your student get merit award? That reduces that number you see, that cost on the website, a little bit more. So figuring out how much it's really going to cost you doesn't really come into play until you've done all the homework associated with financial aid. You've done your FAFSA, your TAP application, you've done the scholarship search, you've got your merit award. Then you can start working with the schools that your student is interested in looking at to figure out what the out-of-pocket is. And we talked a little bit about the timing of being able to get that financial aid information from a couple of schools and going back and kind of using that to negotiate aid. You can do that, but that does require that you've done your financial aid homework as soon as possible to have your award letters from multiple schools so that you can go back and talk to the schools that your student's looking at and say, look, I got, my out-of-pocket. It's not what your scholarship is that matters, it's what your out-of-pocket is. My out-of-pocket with this school is $10,000. My out-of-pocket with your school is $12,000. Can you bring your out-of-pocket down to the 10 or to be better than this? And that's where that negotiation comes in. Again, it's going to be based on what you're paying out of pocket, not just what the merit award is. I'm not sure how many more slides I have left. Sorry. So I think I'm coming towards the end. Oh yeah, I am. So just thinking for ongoing financial planning, all of these steps with financial aid, this first cycle is going to be the hardest because it's all brand new. But these applications for FAFSA, New York State TAP, you do have to do those every year. So it's not a one and done kind of thing. So just keep in mind that all of the financial aid activity needs to keep going. Scholarship searching, that you still need to keep working on searching, or the student needs to keep working on searching for scholarships. And it's always a good practice to just check yourself with, remember your financial goals, what you're able to pay, how's this working for you every year before the next cycle starts, so that you have a good handle on your finances as a family. Many institutions have payment plans, so just aside from all the financial aid that's helping you reduce your bill, payment plans can help you take care of paying for the bill while the student's in school. So that's another option that you might want to consider and ask about with your institutions. And again, don't consider that cost, that tuition and fees page on the website, when you're applying to schools. That conversation comes in later, after you've received all of your aid offers. And continue to attend events. This is so great that all of you are here today. I'm really glad that you've put up with me chatting for so long. But continue to attend the events, because this is the applications, admissions cycle season. Thank you. There are a lot of steps going along the way. This is just your foundation. There is, you will actually have to get into your FAFSA and do your applications, and you'll have questions. You'll have more questions as we go through each step. Continue to participate, and you will feel more comfortable and more informed when it does come time for that decision to be made. And I think we're down to, if anybody has more questions, have at it. Hi. I have one other question. Sure. No, that is one. So that is one of the things that was changed with the new FAFSA calculation. So it used to be that you did get more as a family, or more as a family, based on having multiple students in school during the time where both students were in school. The new calculation is different in that it doesn't, so what would happen, sorry, let me back up a second. So what would happen is when you went, so you have two students in school, they're 2 years apart. While they're in school, you get more money. But then when you go back, the first one graduates from college and now you only have one in school, then you get less money, right? So it would kind of ebb and flow a little bit. Now, from what I'm told and what I understand about the calculation is that they don't use that number in college as a factor anymore in the calculation. They use the overall household size, and that number, so it gives this is what I'm told, like I said, I don't know the math because this is that secret calculation. But what they've done with the calculation is that you end up getting a little more, but that amount more remains consistent for the student, for both students throughout their college experience. So it actually gives them access, gives more students access to Pell, is what I'm told. I don't know how the calculation works. I just know it's no longer a factor, but it's mitigated over time because I'm getting into the weeds, and this is one of it's not, and you not see it, yeah.
Previous years, if you had a student that is a sophomore in college, now you have one
As a freshman, you would have seen a difference. You would have seen an addition because you have two in school.
Right.
Now what is our understanding is that they're saying you have a total of 5 people in your family, so you're getting an incremental increase overall, as opposed to this fluctuation because someone's in college. Some schools, like Manhattanville, we are asking how many students or household individuals are in college because, like Julianne said, we do give institutional need-based aid. Those are Manhattanville grants. Manhattan may have something, other schools might have it, but we are in some of our modeling taking that into consideration. So if there is a question on a school's application, how many students do you have in college, or how many siblings are in college, because your student will be filling it out. Make sure they're filling that out accurately. There's also a section in every application that asks for parent and sibling information. Make sure that that's accurate, especially if you have students in school. I can only speak for Manhattanville in terms of what our financial aid model looks like for need-based, and we do take that into small consideration with our calculations, at least for this year. So we're reviewing models from fall 24 class to review for fall of 25 class.
Yep.
So there are some things that were great about, I'll be very honest,
Yeah.
right? I don't care, I don't work for the government. There were some things that were great for all of you and your students, for the FAFSA, for the changes, for completing it, for higher threshold of need that will receive need. And I think that there were some things that changed that may have impacted certain groups that they didn't anticipate, or it was a cost benefit that they reviewed. So that's my personal opinion,
Yeah,
and
it's
I don't really
still,
care.
like, it's still not done. They're
And they
still
are tweaking it.
Meaning they're separated, filing separately? So when the student and the parent go through the FAFSA, it will require that both parents do participate, but it does have questions that tell you which is the primary contributor for that student. It's usually the one, yes, it usually does fall on the one who's claimed the dependent, or the one that the student is living with. They can be two different things, yes. At the end, they get tax information from both of you. I would read through the steps, because this is one of the ones that's been very muddy for everybody, because the way they ask the question is not clear. Read through the steps as you do the application. I'm hoping that'll provide more clarity, but the default tends to be the parent that the student is living with. But do read through the steps, because that is one of the problem areas of this current cycle's FAFSA application. But yeah, when we get into those FAFSA workshops and things like that, we'll have up-to-date information, can give clearer information. You want me to be done?
I don't, but
Yes, we do have to get in the time frame, so.
But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it. Oops. Just trying to close it down. Okay, sure.
Yeah. So thank you so much. You might notice we've been joined or rejoined by our student participants, and that was by design. The idea is that this morning we came together, started this conversation understanding the landscape of college admissions, and then we broke up, and parents participated in certain workshops, students participated in certain workshops, and hopefully on the drive home, the walk home, sometime at the beach this week, you guys can share notes and together work together to really cultivate a really strong application with the purpose for what we're about to discuss, which is finding the best fit college. So welcome, Evelyn from Manhattan College.
All right, I understand that I stand in the way of the end of the day, so bear with me. We will review a lot of what you've already heard. For students, you may have covered this in your workshop. So I do just want to go over 3 portions of finding the best fit today. Of course, reviewing important dates as we are at the start of the application process, the college search process now. Choosing the right fit. So questions to consider as you are visiting institutions. And I apologize in advance because some of your students might be asking you if they're going to be taking a car to campus. And the third, which you've just heard, really primarily focused on what scholarships are available as you start the process. All right, so some dates that we want to consider is when will the application become available? Currently, for institutions using the common application, for institutions using the coalition application, and some independent applications used by the institution themselves, the application is now available. Now, this does not necessarily mean you have to run to complete this application, but if there are schools already on your list, you can actually start filling out this information. Very basic information: name, home address, parent information, siblings in college. You can actually already provide this information up front. All right, now when it means completing your application, usually what is holding a student back is the essay. Some students will choose and have to wait until their essay is complete to actually move forward with submitting their college application. All right, now again, keeping in mind that is just the application itself. This does not include the additional supplemental information such as letters of recommendation, standardized test scores. All right, this is just the application itself. So again, the application, for the most part, if you are using the common application, is now available. Application due date, so another important date. Now that will vary by institution, as you heard from Erica earlier. There are several dates you want to keep in mind, and terms that we've just learned about today. Early action deadlines, okay, early decision deadlines if you are going to be moving forward with an early decision application, and regular rolling. When is the earliest I can begin applying, which is now? When is the last when is the last day or the best by date I can apply by to ensure that I am getting a timely decision, but also supporting information such as financial aid, scholarships, to make that educated decision. All right, you want to have all that information before you make your final decision. All right, financial aid, when to apply. All right, that is to be determined. But if all goes well, students can start applying this fall, hopefully by the end of the year, so that you will start receiving your financial aid award letters by the end of the year, going into that new year, so that you have, ample time, 3-4 months, to start reviewing not only one but 3, depending on how many institutions you are applying to, so that you can make, again, the best decision possible. And when should I make my decision? Traditionally, May 1st is that deadline, but my biggest suggestion is to also communicate with your admissions counselors. Keep in touch, all right, because it might not be unheard of that you need more time, all right, and certain institutions may offer you that time. Okay, most will. There are students today that haven't made a decision about the fall, and I know that sounds crazy, but it is happening. So just keep these dates in mind, all right. And a little bit about the terms that we learned today. So when we're talking about choosing the right fit, what are we looking for? As Erica mentioned, again, terms that we're looking for, really distributing that list that you are constructing now into 3 buckets. So we have the likely schools, so that safety school, all right, the target schools, the schools that accept mid to 50% of their applicants, and the reach schools, the more competitive institutions, all right. Now, on average, we are finding that students are applying to at least 10 to 12 schools. In some cases, students are applying to more. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to do the same. It depends what you're looking for, all right? Location. This is a big one and something I generally have longer conversations with students about. Where are you looking to be? Now, most students will tell me far away from home, I need some space. And I can say from personal experience, I thought the same thing. And I ended up coming right back closer to home. So I always ask students, if you're looking to go far, what is far? How do you define far? Is that 3 hours? Is that driving distance? Is that 4 hours by plane? All right. If it is 3-4 hours, how are you going to be able to get home in case of an emergency if you need to? Or how do you expect to leave the semester, all right, and come home for the winter break, which can be 5-6 weeks? So you will be back home. So think about, you know, what you're maybe packing up at the end of the semester and how you're getting home, okay? Think about what is around campus. Now, there are opportunities to work on campus, but what if you are looking for maybe the closest outdoor mall? Maybe you are looking for employment within walking distance so that you can, you know, complete a whole schedule of classes, which is 4 to 5 traditionally within your semesters, but still work maybe 2-3 hours after you finish your last class, maybe 2 to 3 times a week. What is within direct, what directly surrounds campus, all right? If you do have to travel off campus, are there means of transportation around campus? So if you are not taking a car with you, what means of transportation are there? Are there buses? Are there trains? Are there buses on campus? All right, something to consider. Some campuses do have buses because their campuses are that large, but do these buses take you maybe to the nearest bus terminal to get home? That would make it easier, okay? Again, keeping in mind, if you are considering taking a car or not, can you have a car on campus as a first-year student? Also questions that you should definitely ask during your visits to these campuses, all right? The size. Now, many of you might be used to a smaller environment. So if you are looking for class sizes that maybe hold no more than 20 to 25 students, maybe that population is anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500. Okay, so a smaller size. If you're looking for medium size, we're talking about maybe 3,100, 3,500 to 7,000, 8,000 students. That's medium size. And then we're talking about larger schools that maybe house 15,000 students. Okay. Now, the biggest difference you'll see is in classroom sizes, right? Sometimes you can have 300 students in a lecture hall or in a classroom, all right? Sometimes you can have as little as 10 to 15. Every average class size is different and will depend on the institutions that you are considering, all right? In those larger class sizes, do you have the ability to connect easily with faculty? What do office hours look like? Do they know you by name? For many students already declaring programs within their first semester, you are going to start taking courses with these same professors that you will be with throughout your 4 years at the college, all right? So you are getting to work with them. They will learn how you learn. You will learn how they teach. And for many students, they become mentors, they become recommenders, and they are recommending you for maybe your first internship or your first job opportunity in the field, all right? So think about what kind of relationships you're also looking to develop in and out of the classroom, all right? Now, programs offered. When we talk about programs, of course, we're thinking academic programs. So are we looking for a liberal arts institution where you do have the opportunity to pursue the arts, STEM, all right, and do have academic partnerships for postgraduate opportunities? These are things obviously we want to consider. For students who are maybe considering 1 to 2 different programs, you're just not sure, do you have the opportunity to do both? All right, and how can you do both? Do I have the opportunity to pursue a second major? Do I have the opportunity to then pursue a concentration and a minor? Again, really diversifying your area of interest, which is in turn making you that much more marketable by the time you hit the workforce. All right, but I'm also talking about programs such as support services. So what does career development offer you? You are a student, yes, but you are also preparing to hit the workforce. All right, so what does professional development look like? What opportunities on that campus are available to you to prepare you for the workforce? So many institutions will have resume building workshops. Many institutions will also provide you with a peer counselor that will review options available to you within the field that you're going to study, maybe how your field of study will align with your interests. There are institutions, Manhattan as an example does offer a mentorship program where in the first year we do offer an opportunity for students to dip their toe in the professional field. So we do pair students with an alumni mentor in their first year so that they get a taste for the industry. And very quickly students learn, this is exactly what I thought it was, I love it. This is not what I thought it was, I do not want to do this. And then they can change their trajectory, all right? So career development, what opportunities are available for you, how likely am I to get an internship, and how likely am I to get a job, so that return on investment. All right, what professional opportunities does this institution offer me for my career of choice? All right, how active can I be, not only as it relates to internships, but maybe student activities. How do they align with not only my interests, but our co-curricular? How do they align with the area of interest that I am pursuing? All right, these are all questions that you may not necessarily ask right away, but as you start to visit these campuses that might interest you, all right, these are questions that will come up. A lot of the time, our offices do a really great job at connecting you with the current student and providing you just a bird's eye view of what each program will offer. But if you're on tour and there happens to be a stop that you're interested in visiting that maybe might not be on tour, make sure that you get the opportunity to visit those facilities. Make sure you do have the opportunity to speak with faculty. Make sure you do have the opportunity to speak with your tour guide or your ambassador. And again, if you have the opportunity, make sure that you do sit in on a classroom. And where you have the opportunity, make sure that you are getting to see campus life. So during your traditional fall or spring semester. Okay, this makes all the difference. Make sure you are attending those larger admissions events, so accepted student days, because at that point, where open house is an opportunity for you to meet with an entire community of faculty and administration, you were just looking, and so you were just looking to see what's available. As an accepted student, you are then having to ask those more specific questions. What does year one look like versus my senior year, and what exactly does that mean for me? One thing I didn't highlight in terms of size, while we are talking about population, I also ask students to consider what community is to them. All right, where your community might be, and your community may be a smaller population, all right? Community for me, means my family, but when I went to college, I found that I had community with my advisor. I found that I had community amongst my group of friends. So if you are looking for that, how do students interact? How do they get to know each other? And really, how do they get to explore their academic or their own personal interests? So student organizations, what does student life look like? Are there any discount tickets to shows, to any sporting events? Is there school spirit? Sometimes students really misinterpret school spirit to mean larger institution football games. That does not necessarily mean community. All right, so community will be where you feel at home, and oftentimes you'll know what home feels like once you step on campus. So I do strongly encourage everyone to visit as many schools as they can, and where they can't, definitely connect with a member of the community to get a better idea for what's available to students. All right. Now, some of these resources have been discussed. So as I mentioned previously, if you are looking for schools similar to maybe schools you are considering now, this is where you can see a lot of that crossover. So very similar in programming, very similar in terms of size, and there are also scholarship opportunities available that were previously discussed as well. All right. You'll have support from your counselors, but these are also some search engines that you can use for research. Research is extremely important as you move forward in the college process. All right. And I can share this so that everyone has this readily available. Now, we've just discussed a lot of information about financial aid. So I don't want to jump right back into it, but I do want, as you start making your list, to hammer in scholarships, all right? So as you are visiting schools, make sure you're asking about scholarship opportunities. Do I need to apply for merit scholarship? Am I automatically considered, all right? What other scholarships can I apply to? Again, this is outside of financial aid, but what scholarships are available? All right. For students who like to write, there might be essay writing scholarships. There might be students who write for the school newspaper, potentially a scholarship available if you would like to submit a piece for consideration. Talent-based scholarships, so students who sing, dance, or act, you do have the opportunity in some cases to audition for a scholarship. Are these scholarships renewable year to year? Are they one-time scholarships? So again, the goal here is to get some of these questions answered as you move forward in the process.
All right, and then of course, athletic scholarships. As was mentioned, Division I and Division II institutions will offer scholarships. My biggest recommendation is to always get in touch with the athletic department and the coach specifically, because they can offer you that information up front and let you know more or less what to expect through the recruitment process, and in some cases confirm a figure for you. It is completely separate from our office in admissions, but we will work together to ultimately get you the information you need to make the best informed decision as you look to make that final decision. All right. And again, some just financial aid piece. This is our contact information. If you have any questions, we are here to support you through the process. I recommend having fun. I know this can be overwhelming, but you should have fun in the process. You are going to be visiting a number of schools. You're going to like a lot. You're not going to like all. So it is extremely important that you try to enjoy the process, as overwhelming as it can be. All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and be with us today. We really appreciate your time. And again, we're here to support you. All right. Of course.
So as we're wrapping up our summer program today, I just wanted to remind everyone that in the folder on the right-hand side, there's a feedback survey. So if you had an opportunity as you leave campus today to give us some feedback, that would help drive the event for next summer. So it would be important if the students and the parents can look at that survey. It's on the right-hand side, and give us some feedback. Just wanted to also say to our students and parents here today, our senior parent night in September will be September 10th at 6:30 in the auditorium. Again, our senior parent night for students and families will be September 10th, 6:30 in the auditorium. Also, our individual senior meetings will begin in September. Every student and family will have the opportunity to sign up, come to the counseling office, and have an individual meeting with myself or Ms. Perillo to continue the college process as we're moving forward and applying in October or November. Really just wish everyone a safe summer. Thank you for coming today. Thank you to our speakers. It was wonderful for our students to have that individual attention and detail and make that connection with you. Thank you to our administrators, especially Dr. Keogh, who's been here helping all along with some troubleshooting, and also planning the conference with Mr. Arthur and Ms. Perillo, as we did for the last couple of months. And I want to thank our students and families for coming in the summer, being here early. I know it's not easy, but this is invaluable for you and what you did in the breakout sessions to continue that momentum this week as we're finishing the common application, as we're starting our personal essay and having it ready for September so that the English teacher can go over it and we can be ahead of the game, okay? So keep that momentum going as we finish the summer, okay? Thank you, everybody.